everyone. It is my pleasure to invite everybody and to welcome all the delegates as well as our speakers today on the fifth India PCB Tech conference, which now we've been organizing with Electronica India every year. The purpose for this conference was to focus on the PCB sector, which is extremely vital for us, and I think we need to invest more in this sector and do a lot more, because the opportunities are huge, and it's a very critical sector because it is very important for the growth of our ESDM sector. Otherwise, we always remain dependent on global suppliers. So I would welcome all the speakers. We are still waiting for Mr. Kushal Patel. I believe he would be joining in a little while. And Mr. Leshner joins from Germany, so I guess he will be joining us at about 11:45 or so, or maybe even 12 o'clock. And my special thanks and warm welcome to Shri Marwaji, Senior Director METI, for joining us as our chief guest. Thank you very much, sir, for being here with us. I would now, request, Paresh ji, Mr. Paresh Nisani, to please, commence the proceedings and give his welcome address. I will give a brief introduction of Mr. Basani, though I believe all of us would be knowing him, and even most of the delegates would be knowing him. But Mr. Basani is an entrepreneur since many years now. I think 22 years, if I'm right, Pareshji, and has established the PCB power market in India and the US. He is a leading manufacturing and assembly company, and I am aware that they are doing a lot of specialized work in small volumes, but very high tech products in the PCB sector. Mr. Basani is also the president of Elsina. So thank you for joining us from USA, and we look forward to your welcome address. Over to Mr. Basani, please.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Marwa sir. Thank you. And welcome to this very important session. Sir, your presence and your support are always inspiring and motivating for us, and we look forward to your continued support, sir, in future also. Thank you, sir. I would also like to welcome Mr. Devendranath, whom I usually call Mr. Research. I mean, he is like he's a guy with a lot of research possibilities and potential and capabilities. He has been a great supporter for Elsina. Elsina and his group, feedback group, have made a few reports, especially in PCB industry. And he has done great work in bringing a lot of information and putting in a right way for the government as well as for the industry stakeholders. As soon as the other guests join, I'll try to introduce and welcome them. PCB industry is a very challenging industry, and I would categorize this as a relatively tough industry to be in for many reasons, like environmental issues, like capital investment, continuous requirement, labor-oriented industry, technology is changing, evolving very fast, and the customers' expectations are ever increasing in terms of price, delivery, and so on and so forth. And in India, we also have limited supply chain. In spite of all these things, there is a lot of silver line that I can see since last 5 years, especially with the help of government and the policies that government of India and various states have come up with, like MCIPs, specs, PLI. All these policies have really changed the way we do business in last 5 years. Mr. Marwa, thank you, sir. And we are very grateful always with METI as well as with the government of India initiatives and support that you have extended. And I must say that PCB industry in India, especially most of the entrepreneurs, are very upbeat, and we are taking this challenge in the right direction, sir. And we look forward to your support in future also. So this has changed entire game in last 5 years, and we are really excited to see a a huge improvement and possibly new investments coming up in India in coming years. Recently, there were a couple of major setbacks that happened, including pandemic and border issues with our neighbors. However, post-pandemic, I would not call that pandemic is over, but post-lockdown, the things and activities have picked up in electronics manufacturing, and we are seeing a good support and demand from customers in India and outside India. That has fueled and coupled with recent initiative of self-reliant India by Honorable Prime Minister has also helped us and encouraged our customer to look towards Indian PCB producers and then work hand in hand together. I think there are some challenges, there are issues, there are support, there is a continuous involvement, and we see that there is a possible for us to improve in many ways. We also have two excellent sessions after the opening remarks and inauguration session, which are very important, very relevant to today's requirement and scenario. We have excellent speakers, knowledgeable panelists. They are willing to share, and they'll be happy to share their perspective and views on PCB industries and about Indian electronics industry in general. So we look forward to having a very, very nice interaction and networking possibilities among each other. So I also welcome remaining panelists and the speakers in the next following two sessions. Without taking too much of a time, I would like to request Mr. Marwa sir, who has been kind and supportive enough in spite of his other personal engagements. He has made himself available for us, and we would be happy to listen and talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paresh Vasani, Mr. Raju Goyal, Mr. Devendranath, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. I'm indeed happy to be here participating in this conference on a very important topic, powering up the Indian PCB manufacturing industry. So, as you know, electronics manufacturing is a priority sector for the government, and we have come a long way in the past 5 years. And electronics manufacturing has truly proved to be an important leg of the Make in India program. Policies and schemes launched by the government, including ease of doing business and fiscal incentives, reduction of corporate income tax rates, have created a conducive environment for the domestic electronics manufacturing to flourish. The National Policy on Electronics 2019 has been notified with the vision to position India as a global hub for electronic system design and manufacturing, and creating an enabling environment for the industry to compete globally. The Indian electronics market is presently valued at about $130 billion, out of which domestic manufacturing accounts for $76 billion, and the rest of it is imported. The Indian electronics market is forecasted to grow to $400 billion by 2025. The National Policy on Electronics 2019 has set an ambitious target of $400 billion electronics production by 2025, out of which the mobile handset manufacturing shall contribute about $190 billion, with exports of $110 billion. PCBs, being the backbone of electronics, are in huge demand in India. The current demand for PCBs from Indian electronics manufacturing industry is estimated to be about $2.5 billion, including both bare PCBs and the PCBs that form part of the modules. Of these, bare PCB constitute about $1.8 billion. Going forward, the demand for PCBs is likely to reach $7.5 billion by 2025. This represents a huge opportunity in demand for PCBs in India, which cannot be left solely to be catered by foreign suppliers. The Indian PCB industry needs to be augmented to step up domestic manufacturing of PCBs in India. The Indian PCB industries, while developing the capabilities and technology, needs to scale up substantially in the long term. While the consumption of bare PCBs in India was worth $1.8 billion during the last year, the production of bare PCBs by Indian manufacturers stood at around US $234 million only, out of which $138 million worth of PCBs were exported. Despite the growth of Indian electronics manufacturing in recent years and the associated increase in PCB demand, the country has not seen any major expansion in the domestic production volume of bare PCB. However, we have received several proposals under the Modified Special Incentive Package Scheme, MSIPS, about which was mentioned by Mr. Vasani, for manufacturing bare PCBs that have been approved. So we expect to see new manufacturing capacities in PCBs coming up and also expansion of the existing capacity. In terms of technology adoption, the domestic PCB manufacturing in India continues to revolve largely around single-sided and double-sided PCBs, which together account for over 70% of the overall Indian bare PCB production. Also, the Indian PCB manufacturers are mostly focused on rigid PCBs with 4 to 6 layers. Flexible circuits are expected to be the fastest growing technology in the global markets due to the form factor reduction and elimination of connectors. The Indian PCB industry is stuck with high mix, medium volume business where a variety of PCBs are manufactured, but in low to medium volumes. This needs to change. We need to move up our technology capabilities and also achieve economies of scale to be competitive globally. Now we are aware that PCBs are covered under the ITA 1 of WTO and attract nil basic customs duty. So there is no duty protection. So in order to compensate for disabilities, we have announced new schemes. And as the world is undergoing paradigm shift in manufacturing and companies are relocating operations to further avoid disruptions because of global geographical concentration of the supply chains as an after effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, MeitY has introduced 3 new schemes for promoting Make in India for the electronics manufacturing sector. These are the production-linked incentive scheme for large-scale electronics manufacturing, where we are providing 4% to 6% incentive for mobile phones as well as specified electronic components. We have also introduced the scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electronic components and semiconductors, what we call specs in short, where 25% capex incentive is being provided. Both the PLI and spec scheme cover bare PCB and their value chain, that is the PCB laminates, prepex, photopolymer films, PCB printing inks, and also printed flexible electronics. So I urge the domestic PCB manufacturers to take advantage of both these schemes. Actually, the first round of applications under the PLI scheme is closed, but the second round of applications will also be open shortly. And I urge the global as well as domestic PCB manufacturers to take advantage of the PLI scheme. Besides these 2 schemes, in order to which will compensate the disabilities to a large extent, we have also mandated that the bare PCBs be domestically manufactured in the 13 electronic products that we have notified in furtherance of the public procurement reference to Make in India order issued by the DPIIT. So with this, I urge both the global and domestic industry to take advantage of the available schemes and set up manufacturing operations for bare PCBs in the country. I wish this conference success and also keenly look forward to the outcome of the two panel discussions which are going to happen after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marwa. I think it is very exciting to learn that there is a second PLI scheme on the way. And I think the industry has been waiting for that, because a lot of, a lot of, the investors who wanted to, get into this could not, because I think, the window there was very short. And also some of the requirements were very large, and, some of the investment requirements were very large. So we are all hoping that this time, the investment requirement or the threshold would be a little lower, so that more Indian companies are able to join and more of the MSMEs are able to join. We are all looking forward to that. That was, a wonderful speech, Mr. Marwa. I hope, that you will be able to, stay with us for a little while more while, the other speakers are there. So with that, I will now request, Dev to. Dev, are you online now? You are okay? You had some technical issue.
I'm perfectly fine, sir. I could hear you all. Thank you so much.
Okay, wonderful. So I would now request, Mr. Devendranath, who's our research partner, not only for the PCBs, but also for many other sectors for which we are working with, with feedback advisory. And we appreciate, the support that we are getting from you there. I will briefly introduce Dev. Mr. Devendranath is the COO of Feedback Advisory, which is an Indian domestic company which is doing very well in this area of advisory and research services for, especially for the engineering and the technical industry. Feedback Advisory is a research-based advisory firm that specializes in providing market assessment, analysis, and advisory services to global and Indian companies. Dev is an electronics engineer and has over 25 years of experience in the Indian industry and has been associated with the aspects of studying and researching the Indian industry very closely. So we have a very experienced person with us. Dev, I now hand over to you to please show your latest updates on the PCB industry and PCB market. Over to you, Dev. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goyal, for those kind words. And can I request Yogesh to please put on the presentation, please?
It's already on we can see that presentation.
It's already on the screen. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see that. Thank you so much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We thank Elcina for giving us this opportunity. And we had done a detailed study of the PCB industry in 2019, and we had presented this earlier this year. So this report is essentially an update of that activity, and this is still a kind of a work in progress report which will be released very soon in the next 1 to 2 weeks by Elcina. So we present you the findings as we understand the PCB industry for FY 2019-20. There are some very interesting developments which has happened in this year, and therefore I hope that the audience appreciates what the industry is going through and where this industry is headed. So let me, we can go to the next slide, please. We start with a global overview of the PCB industry. The industry is estimated to be somewhere in the range of $68 to $70 billion worldwide, and this is likely to reach $88 billion by 2024. India currently is a small part in terms of the production of PCBs when compared to the global standard, but this is, I think, what the whole industry and the government of India is working towards, making India as one of the key bases for PCB manufacture going further. The global PCB business is driven by mobiles, of course, to a large extent, but there are some very interesting developments happening in all other segments, such as computer peripherals, be it the tablets or the laptops, etc. And the computer peripherals, consumer durables, and also medical electronics and automotive electronics. So the electronics usage in the world is increasing very rapidly, and I'm sure we all have seen this in the post-COVID world. how our lives were dependent on electronics. So this is likely to grow, and the PCB industry is likely to go with that. Along with this, there are various developments happening in the PCB industry in terms of miniaturization, in terms of functionalities, and the whole manufacturing process of PCB itself is undergoing a huge change. And this is also leading to a very high and more complex PCB with a more number of layers. And this is what is expected. And we hope that these new high technology products do come in India and meet the demands of the Indian market as well as the global markets. Next slide, please. In 2019-20, the overall market for the overall PCB consumption in India was about $2.8 billion. Now, how did we arrive at this? We had explained this earlier as well. The process remains the same in terms of how we estimated. We looked at the total electronics manufacturing in the country, and of that, we looked at the electronic BOM. And from that, for different product categories and segments, we arrived at the PCB consumption within the electronic BOM. And therefore, in 2019-20, if we look at the electronics manufacturing in the country, if you remove the components part of it, it was close to in the range of $65 to $68 billion. And the electronic BOM works out to be 46.3. And the PCB consumption in the country is close to about $2.8 billion. And this is about 4% of the electronic products market in terms of that, and about 6% of the electronic BOM. What has happened in FY 19-20 compared to the previous years when we look at the whole trend? I'm explaining this in detail, much more details in the next slide. But very briefly, there has been a brief dip in the domestic production and exports from India. But the overall PCB consumption in India has grown, and it has grown quite significantly compared to the previous year. And this was mainly through imports. Imports has also accordingly grown, and we have a very high dependence on imported PCBs in the country. If you come to the next slide, please. This is explained much more clearer in the next slide. Yeah. Of the $2.8 billion of PCB consumption in the country, 0.6 billion of this is of the PCBs which are bought through PCBAs as part of PCBAs. Of that, if we take out the portion of PCBs, it's $0.6 billion. And the bare PCBs consumption in the country is about $2.2 billion. Now, yeah, please click on, yeah. Of this, when we look at what has changed over the previous year, this is a very interesting chart. The domestic manufacturing is close to about $225 billion. This we have seen as marginal dip compared to the previous year. It was $235 billion. And one of the key reasons is our exports has reduced quite significantly. I would say 13% of exports has been reduced compared to the previous year. It was $137.5 million, and last year, FY 19-20, it was close to $120 billion. Of which this was some part of it was made up by selling more to the domestic market by the PCB manufacturers. $105 million sales of the domestic manufactured PCBs to the domestic market. And this represents a 9.5% growth over the previous year. It was about $96 million. The most interesting part is the imports. The imports into the country has reached $2.13 billion, which is a 24% increase from $1.7 billion last year. And the total consumption in the country is about $2.2 billion. And this is a 23% more than what we had seen in the previous year. Now, what has led to this? One of the key things which has happened in 19-20 compared to the previous years was essentially that the fastest growing segment of electronics in India, the mobile devices, they have started assembling PCBAs in India, and therefore, almost everything of this PCBs is imported. And since the impact of, you will see this impact in the future slides, the mobile production in the country has gone up, and the domestic manufacturing of PCBAs which started in 19-20, it had an impact on the overall PCB consumption and the whole imports in the country. Yeah, next slide, please. This is a very interesting chart. If you see how this $2.8 billion of PCBs are consumed in the country, you will see that left-hand side chart represents the split by different segments. and the segment market shares of the overall PCB consumption. If you see the portion of mobile phones, which is 19% of the total PCB consumption in the country, this is 3.2% more market share compared to the previous year. In 1920, we had estimated the mobiles to be about 15.7 or 15.8% of the overall PCB consumption. And this year it has grown to 19%. Whereas the segments of industrial electronics, computer hardware, and even consumer durables, their market shares, their market share gain has actually reduced. And lighting more or less remained the same of 10% of the overall consumption. And strategic electronics is a very, very small portion, and it also remained more or less the same in terms of the market shares. And the most significant part is on the right-hand side of the chart. If you see this chart in the 1920 report, 1819 report, which we published last year, in that the mobiles was completely was in gray. That means it was imported as a PCBA, and this has significantly changed in the last 1 year, where we see the bare PCB consumption happening in mobiles because of the PCBA manufacturing, which many companies and the EMS firms have started in India. So that is a big update which we have. And just as a point to note, when we talk of industrial electronics, it has a large part of electronics being manufactured under industrial, which includes auto electronics, telecom electronics, telecom equipments, medical electronics, and power electronics. Yes, please, next slide. Okay, when we come to the different layers of PCBs, this also has seen a significant change, primarily driven by, again, the increased consumption of PCBs by mobile segment. And if you see the multi-layer segment, this and the others, which includes the flex, these two are the segments which mobiles predominantly use. And these segments share has considerably increased over the previous year. Whereas when we look at the single-sided and the double-sided, their share has actually reduced a bit when we compare it with the previous year. The most important part of the mobile phones is the usage of very high-end PCBs in mobiles, more than 8 layers, and the flexible PCBs which is there. Similarly, when we look at the segment contribution or the type of PCBs contribution in each segment, we have on the right-hand side of this chart, where industrial electronics, it is predominantly single-sided, and double-sided also has a considerable share. There is a very few usage of multi-layer PCBs in the industrial electronics sector, and flex is a very, very small part of it. Most of the smart meters and others, they are predominantly using double-sided and single-sided PCBs. Whereas in consumer electronics, it is predominantly multi-layer, driven by the usage in the televisions, and that has a very dominant part in the overall consumer electronics. But most of the other, I would call it as other durables, but they are big in size, but the electronics consumption is very poor in terms of washing machines and refrigerators, etc. They mostly rely on single-sided or double-sided PCBs, but their contribution share to the overall electronics market in the consumer durables business is very small. So the television's dominance in the consumer electronics is very high. And in the mobile, it is predominantly multi-layer, and there is a small portion of flexible PCBs as well. And in LED lightings, it is predominantly single-sided and metal-clad PCBs, which is predominantly used. And then we also have instances of double-sided and some multi-layer coming in here. In computer hardware, it is predominantly double-sided and multi-layer thing for whatever is being made in the country. And this segment is expected to significantly change over the next 4 or 5 years with a very high amount of value additions happening in the country, which will lead to more usage of multi-layer and other PCBs in computer hardware. Strategic electronics is a very important segment in the country, and here we see quite a bit of double-sided and multi-layer PCBs being used. Most of the Indian EMS firms who have a very strong presence in the strategic electronics sector, they use predominantly double-sided and the multi-layer PCBs. Yogesh, if you could move to the next slide, please. Yes. So the PCB industry is significantly seeing, in terms of the consumption and the market, India is definitely a large market to deal with. But the question is, how much of these PCBs are made in the country? I think that's a big thing. Now, if you look at what is driving this whole PCB business in India, is definitely the whole focus on making in India, the push towards Make in India and the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, which the results of which I think electronics is the one sector where we are seeing a vast amount of impact of Make in India compared to many other sectors in the country. And this is highlighted in the fact that we are making about 300 million phones in the country already. And now with an increased value additions of manufacturing in the mobile phone in India, I think this is bound to grow more, and the demand for PCBs is likely to increase. There is also a huge influx of new electronic applications which is coming into everybody's lives, and therefore coupled with this, the whole program of the government of India in terms of Digital India and other part, I think those are the things which are actually driving more usage of electronic products, and thereby the need for PCBs. And we are seeing a very strong what we call it as headwinds for the electronic industry as such, and PCB industry is definitely one of the core of this whole electronic industry. Yes, please. Keeping this growth factors in mind, the way what we are projecting for the future for the next 5 years is, India has the goal of reaching $400 billion of manufacturing by 2025. Let's keep that figure in mind first. And keeping that figure in mind, if you look at the electronic equipments, out of this 400 billion, it will be close to about $300 billion of equipment. And we are hoping that we would make $300 billion of equipment, but realistically, if we consider there could be some amount of imports of electronic products which might still happen due to various reasons. We have considered that factor of there could be some amount of imports out of this $300 billion. And based on that, I have tried to show you a trend chart of 2019 report of where we had estimated the bare PCB consumption in the country of $1.8 billion. This has increased to $2.2 billion in 1920. And you will see the one significant change in these two bars of FY19 and FY20 is the addition of the green part of the mobile, which was non-existent in FY19. You see suddenly it having quite a decent share. And going by what we are hearing from different stakeholders in the marketplace, we are estimating FY21 more than doubling of the PCB manufacturing in the country than what happened last year. And this year, as everybody knows, we are the most of the sectors are impacted with COVID. There has been some amount of lockdown where none of the manufacturing happened. But we are seeing the impact of COVID in many sectors which are non-mobile. They are still yet to come back to normalcy and reach their previous peak COVID levels. So we are seeing the headwinds which we are getting from the marketplace when we speak to different stakeholders is that there will be some degrowth in the other electronic verticals, but this will be more or less made up by a huge increase in the mobile phones and the PCB usages there. Yeah. Therefore, our estimation for FY 2021 is that we would more or less be at similar levels. This is still under validation. As we said, we are presenting a work in progress report. In the next week or 2 weeks, once we finalize all our research, we might, some of these numbers may change, but at this point in time, what I'm seeing is the PCB industry will more or less be similar to the last year in terms of the overall bare PCB consumption in the country. The amount of how much of it is met by Indian companies and imports is yet to be seen. Looking at the FY2025 horizon, we are estimating this business to reach $6.8 billion. And I'm sure some of y'all who have seen the previous report will remember that we had considered a $7.3 billion estimation by 2025. We have slightly scaled it down to $6.8 billion, mainly from two reasons. One is this whole COVID thing, and thereby the growth of the non-mobile segment, which was expected to happen in 2021, and thereby going further into 21, 22, etc. That did not happen, and that is not happening. And we are seeing a degrowth there. Therefore, it has some impact on the overall future numbers. And also this time what we have done is, the previous time when we did, we had considered the overall $300 billion of electronic equipment being manufactured in the country and estimated the PCBA consumptions there. This time around, since working with Encina, we have already done one EMS study very recently, which there also our understanding after speaking to different stakeholders in the Indian market was that not all of this would be made in the country and there would be some amount of imports. So we have also brought in that realistic expectations of the 2025 market of what is going to be manufactured in the country. Based on that, we are estimating this PCB industry to be a $6.8 billion business driven by the mobile PCB consumption, and the other sectors will have its normal growth as expected over the next 4 or 5 years. So this still represents a 25% CAGR, and I'm sure all of you being from the electronics industry will know that the Indian electronics business has grown over 25% over the last 5 years. So keeping the 25% CAGR growth over the last 5 years and preparing for the next 5 years of growth with the 25% CAGR is itself a mammoth task for any industry to grow at 25% growth for a decade. I think that means something for the nation and for the industry, and that is what the electronics industry is hoping to achieve. And if you look at the type of PCBs which are likely to be used going further, driven by mobile as well as in other segments, the multi-layer PCBs is going to have a significant share by 2025, and this is where the investments are required in the country, because most of the PCB manufactured in the country is predominantly single-sided and double-sided, and thereby the potential what we are seeing here is quite significant. The multi-layered PCB alone is likely to be a $4.5 billion industry going further. And this cries out for investments in the PCB manufacturing business in India and at a scale. You know, when we are competing with countries like China, Vietnam, and others, China and Taiwan for PCBs, we have to understand the scale at which they operate, and for Indian companies to be competitive with them, we need scales of manufacturing coming in PCB. Sorry. And yeah, if you can come to the next slide, please. And that is what our whole point is, that there is a significant opportunity to invest in integrated PCB manufacturing ecosystem in the country. It has a very attractive market size, as we said, that the PCB demand is increasing in the country, coupled with the fact that there is a non-existent or a huge demand supply gaps in the multi-layered PCBs, which calls for investments. And if you look at the three key segments, as we told last time as well, mobile phones, computer hardware, and televisions, this itself is going to be a very, very significant market for the Indian PCB companies or even international PCB companies to come to India and invest in PCB manufacturing and start. And as Mr. Marava very rightly said before, the government of India is very actively supporting the electronics business, and I'm sure they are also looking forward for PCB investments to happen in the country in a big way. Yeah. uh, these challenges still remain. We had captured most parts of this in the previous report as well. But I think this is no taking away. We can't see any of these challenges being removed as such in the last 1 year of what we have been seeing in the industry. The industry still continues to have, in terms of the Indian PCB companies, because of the kind of products we are manufacturing and selling in the country, we are faced with the low volumes of the production or the capacity of manufacturing which the companies have. And there are no local raw material suppliers as well. Most of the PCB manufacturers have to depend on imported raw materials, and which leads to cost escalation and the inefficiency in the system. And they are unable to compete in the domestic market when we look at the products coming in from China and Taiwan, etc. And the declining share of Indian manufacturers and imports are gaining significantly, and therefore this is leading again to the Indian manufacturers not able to compete. So this is a vicious cycle in the sense this Indian companies are caught up with, and that is something which we all need to see how to overcome this. And I think investing in new capacities in the products which are required by the market, I think that is going to be one of the key directions for the industry to take. And that is multi-layered and higher order of PCBs to be made in the country. Yeah. So the recommendations which we have made, I think it is still very much valid, and the industry, and I think some of these points have already been taken for action by the government of India as well. We have long called for having, for the nation to have a vision statement or a goal document to have. And I think that is what this whole report theme is. We are right now at around 225 to 235 million dollars of manufacturing of PCBs in the country. India should aim, set a goal that we need to have a 10x manufacturing in the country from this. If we set a goal of $2 billion of PCB manufacturing in the country, I think that is a worthwhile goal to have. And I think there is a market for that. It is now for the industry to take up this challenge and get this manufacturing done, and then see how do we compete with other nations in terms of many of the disability factors which we were talking in the past 2-3 years. Some of them have definitely been addressed with different schemes from the government of India, and there are some things which still needs to be done in the midterm, as well as there is a very immediate need which was felt by many PCB manufacturers in terms of the raw materials availability in the country and the need for them to import, and how they are not able to get the right benefits from the distributors, and whether the distributors can be provided a deemed supplier status. These were some of the requests by the Indian PCB companies for some immediate need. But I think the long-term need and the mid-term strategy which the industry and the government of India needs to have is very important. And we need to work towards this to make the Make in India in PCB happen in a real way. I think that is yet to be done. With this, I conclude what I had to present. And this is, as I said, this is still a work in progress report. We are hopeful that in the next week or 10 days we should be completing this work, and there might be some changes. If there are any changes in the numbers as such, we will update the industry accordingly. Mr. Goyal, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dev. I think there are some very interesting findings, and I see that there is a need for, I think, a Q&A also on this. So I hope you will stay on the panel, and then let's have a little short, 5 minutes of maybe questions on this. I am looking for Mr. Kushal Patel, but I see that he's not. Maybe he is lost the connection. Kushalji, are you there? I don't see his name in the participants in the speakers list, so possibly he's dropped out.
Sir, we are trying to connect with him.
Okay, Yogesh, did you say something?
Yeah, I said we are trying to connect with Mr. Kushal Patel.
Okay.
He's
So in the meantime, Pareshji, if I may ask, we'll just take, a couple of minutes.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think because there are yeah, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I have few observations and maybe I can highlight a couple of points based on the report presented by Mr. Dev. Uh, uh, yeah, I think these are very excellent points, and you really have done a good job in bringing and putting the real scenario of PCB industry challenges and opportunities. So that's very great for all of us to take an insight of it. Uh, Definitely, Indian PCB industry is growing, but it is not growing enough for the demand. So if the CAGR you're talking about 25%, I think we are growing on average maybe 10 to 12 or 15%. So the gap widens, unfortunately, whether we like it or not. And we need to bring that gap. And at Elsina, I think it's one of the tasks that we have taken to bring $100 million investment, new investment in PCB manufacturing over a next period of 2 to 3 years. And this will really challenge the supply chain scenario and will welcome the much needed ecosystem to be brought up in India, which will again fuel the further growth of PCB industry, and we will eventually come out of the vicious cycle that you just mentioned. I think that is something that I just wanted to highlight. We are very positive. We are quite excited the future, and customers are really supporting us post pandemic or post lockdown. I think we see a silver line here, so we hope that that continues.
Right. Now, regarding the investment, I think there's one question I have had. Uh, we are talking about a $6.8 billion market. Now, what percentage of that are we looking to cater to? Because looking at our situation right now, is a $2.8 billion market. Dave, is that the right number that you just showed on your slide?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Earlier it was 2.5, now it is 2.8.
2.8 is the consumption, and of which, even if we remove some portion of the PCBA part, which comes as that, let us look at the 2.2 billion, which is the bare PCB market.
Okay, so
from
whatever
2.2 to go to 6.8 is a significant scope for growth, and in fact the theme of the report is such that we understand that the vicious cycle which the industry is in, and many international investors may find it difficult to invest in a smaller market, but we are now talking of a market of a particular scale, which India should be aspiring to reach. And that is why this whole 10x kind of a thing, we cannot think small now to address this large market. We will never be successful. We'll never be competitive in the global market.
Right.
So only by thinking big, yeah.
No, the point I was making was that right now we are at 220 or 230 million dollars of production. So I mean, we are not talking about going from 2.2 to 6.8. We are talking about going from 200 million to 6.8.
Yes, yes.
I mean, the growth is actually something. So we actually, Pareshji, I think we need to, not look at $100 million, but possibly we need, $1 billion every year in PCB. Only then we will be able to. And the capital output ratio is very high.
Yes, आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर, if that happens, I mean, that will be fantastic. But to even think about $1 billion investment in PCB industry itself is something that beyond our imagination. And if that happens, that's nothing like it. But I think a little steps of $100 million, $200 million over a period of next 1 to 2 years will certainly change the scenario, because then everybody will be here, because everybody wants to eat the pie that is available. And then where things are happening, the domestic manufacturing will be given a preference. Even for the mobile manufacturers, for logistics, supply chains, this pandemic has taught us many lessons, and one of the biggest problem that we are facing right now is domestic as well as international logistics supply chain, and people are not very comfortable. Customers are not very comfortable in such kind of a situation. So if I were to buy a local PCB at a competitive rate, I think that's what is going to be the scenario. So,
Correct.
and I think one more thing, Dev, if I may ask you,
Yes, sir.
it would be also interesting to find out and do some research, not necessarily from the stakeholders in India, but from the global perspective. What is the investment quantum that we are looking at, as Rajuji rightly mentioned briefly, because that investment number is also equally important for us to really put forward that number to the government and then work backwards so that certain schemes, modifications, and etc. are continuously monitored, keeping the proposed investment in the mind in capital. Because when you are talking about $1 billion investment, eventually, or $1 billion, it's a game changer. It's a game changer, and certainly we would like to know what kind of possibilities are there in that thing.
So there is one question in the Q&A chat box. It is from Mr. Abhay Doshi, who is also a speaker in the next session. And of course, he's also, a very important player in this industry.
Yes.
He's asking what are the industries and applications which are classified under strategic electronics. Would you like to share something on that, Dave?
Yeah,
you can answer.
yeah. Typically, sir, strategic electronics is worldwide. It has either you can call it as strategic electronics or you call it as aerospace and defense, A&D as it is called as. That is the industry which typically caters to the one is the defense needs in terms of defense systems, being the radars and the communications which go in the military applications, as well as the internal security and the other parts, as well as the requirements for the aerospace industry, which is quite significant in itself. Even though India doesn't have, in India we don't call it as A&D primarily because we don't have any aerospace manufacturing as such. Apart from a small part which is again defense related. Therefore, we call it as defense electronics or strategic electronics in that sense. I hope that answers Mr. Doshi's question.
Dave, I also have one more point. If you can throw some more light on those things. You mentioned about flex and flex rigid segment. And it seems that it is also growing rather rapidly because of mobile phone industry. I believe, is it correct that there is a practically negligible manufacturing happening in flex and flex rigid circuits in India? I mean, based on your research?
Yes, sir. There is hardly anything. I think we have only found, I think, very few companies in flex and flex rigid. And since this and that segment also, and the companies who are making that also, which includes one of the India's largest companies, they are not catering to the Indian market needs of those products because they're not competitive for the Indian companies, and they are exporting it for the global requirements. So there are two things for Indian companies, if I may say so. Any investor who's looking at making in India, apart from looking at the Indian market consumption, which itself is quite huge, and but we have to also note that India is very well poised to cater to the needs of the US as well as the European nations' requirement of PCBs and complex PCBs and strategic PCBs if the scales of manufacturing happen in India. And because we are fortunately for us in the very good books of these nations, and post COVID, there is a general or a perspective that companies need to de-risk from China, and I think that is an opportunity which we need to look at. So the point I'm making is definitely focus on domestic market requirements because we need to save on our imports forex, but the much bigger picture is the exports business which Indian PCB companies can look at, and especially the auto requirements and the auto electronic requirements of Europe and Germany, and that is quite significant and it's very complex, which I'm sure the technical capability which we have in the Indian SME manufacturers in India who are catering to strategic electronics, they can very well cater to these markets.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this is really it's a right perspective. So, like you said, just to add a couple of more points, there are two elements that Indian PCB industry needs to focus. One is a capability, another is a capacity. I think both verticals or both thoughts have huge opportunities. I mean, anybody can decide whether they want to go for capacity or they want to go for capability. There is ample opportunity. I think that is a good point that you made.
There are two more issues which we can discuss, and I think they are important from everybody's point of view. One is that how are we going to manage the supply chain? Because that becomes a very big issue here. The supply chain, because everything is getting imported. I believe there are only very limited amount of raw materials and maybe some chemicals, etc., which are available. But I think you can throw more light on that. So there is a major investment required in the supply chain. Even before we start actually putting up the PCB shops, as we call them. Abroad, normally I hear the term PCB shop, where the final PCB is made. Once the design, etc., is available from the customer, and then you make the PCB. But what about the supply chain? Where do you get that? There's a huge amount of investment required. And the other point, which also we can discuss at the same time, is what about the capital equipment? The capital equipment will happen only when there is a minimum critical mass of the industry, number one. Secondly, at least we should have the servicing arrangement, because there is such expensive equipment. I believe each of these high speed drilling machines, it costs 50, 60, 70 lakh rupees, or maybe even more. Now, I mean, I'm sure the costs are going up. So I'm talking about costs which I know about from few years back. So I mean, all these issues are there, and this is what is the base of the industry. Maybe Abhay Doshi ji can also answer. Paresh ji, would you like to answer? And then possibly Mr.
May I
Doshi
speak?
is on the call now. He can talk to speak.
Doshi sir, please go ahead.
So just one point, just the way mobiles was abysmally small in the earlier years, and then it shot up and it substantially bridged the PCB goals and targets. Same way I feel the aerospace and defense market can also shoot up. Is the mill approval, which is the approval given by the US Department of Defense. If an equivalent approval and a certification agency is set up by the government, which is India-based, where Indian PCB companies can go and get it. So without compromising on the capabilities and the reliability required for defense, if this approval process is an opportunity for the Indian PCB companies, because there is a substantial amount of import being done. And this could help reach the goal that we are all talking about.
Doshi sir, it's a very interesting point, and I would say a little bit of sensitive points, because this boards or technology that is used in aerospace and defense are extremely reliable. Most of the companies that use PCBs are multinationals, and they would be a little bit reluctant to have a parallel approval body which is similar to mill spec, and that is a challenge that Indian industry is facing. So we need to find a way either to set up an comparable and equivalent mill standards available for India, which are valid for global players to use PCBs from India with that certification. There is no question of reliability compromise. Or we need to facilitate mill spec standards somehow with the help of government, and then either financially supporting or facilitating, and then make sure that those companies who are willing to be qualified as a mill spec company are given opportunity to do so.
Just one quick point. I think Rajubhai, if through Elsina, if this can be pushed with Mr. Marwa and the Defense Ministry, that would really open up the door. And I am at no point advocating any type of need an agency which can do as thorough a job as the Department of Defense in the US in giving the mill approval. But if it is in India, that would give the opportunity to several Indian PCB companies to avail this market.
Yes, I think definitely, Abhayji, I think we can take up this issue. And right now, there are some companies which are supplying to the defense sector. I believe there are one or two companies in Bombay and there is one in Bangalore who are doing this, this work, and it is very critical. But I think what you were talking about is the approval under the mill standard.
Yes.
So right now, I don't think that we have that facility here, but I think we should definitely, make a proposal for that, and we can write to the Defense Ministry itself, because the Department of Defense Production is quite active now, and I'm sure that they will be able to help us. We should take it up definitely.
Yes, this is also in line with the Atmanirbhar theme that the government is practicing, and especially in defense, if this is achieved, there's nothing like it. So there are multiple goals that can be satisfied. The jump in the PCB production, because you have a local market, you have an edge, you offer an edge to the defense department. So, and you ultimately become Atmanirbhar and prosperous.
Right, and the other point which I feel is important is regarding the equipment, because I often speak to Mr. Manwani about this, and he says that most of the PCB manufacturers or PCB shops have a big issue when their machines break down, because they buy equipment from a lot of the large global companies because their equipment is not manufactured in India, and then it's very difficult to maintain the machines. So, if there is a breakdown, then, somebody has to fly down, or somebody has to, courier a part from somewhere abroad. So I think that is one area which, but I guess these are only wishes that we have, and they will be, fulfilled only once we have an industry of a reasonable size. Because everybody would be looking at some sort of, critical mass to make their business viable. So that is another thing which I feel is very important.
No, there are several execution challenges, but I think once you have a market and an accessible one, many of these execution issues will sort themselves.
Absolutely right. So I think, Pareshji, we can, we have, Dr. Leshner with us now. Welcome once again. Nice to see you again, sir. I hope that we see you in India soon. Yeah. While it is good to meet on the screen, but I would love to, have you here in person, and maybe we can also travel to Germany soon.
The same on my side, Mr. Goel. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So what I would say, Pareshji, that maybe we can. I think Kushalji has some some urgency has come up, I believe, and he is not available. So he had to leave the session. And I think we've had a good discussion. Maybe we can go for for closing the session now, and we can request Dr. Leshner to give the vote of thanks. And unless you want to say something prior to that.
No, I think we covered. Just wanted to make sure that all these points that we have discussed are equally highlighted in upcoming sessions right after this one, and we hope that we try to cover and then have more participations from the audience or from the delegates, and then we can have a comprehensive conclusion about the priorities and areas that we need to focus in a short term and long term. Thank you.
Certainly. So there are two interesting sessions coming up, and the next one is a fairly power-packed session. Mr. Doshi is also there in that session. AT&S and Epitome and all the key companies are there, and New Line. So before I hand over to Dr. Leshner, I would just make one short comment and thank IPCA for being our partner for this and for supporting this. And we look forward to working with them in the future also. And I now hand over to you, Dr. Leshner, for the vote of thanks, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goel. Thank you for letting me join this session today and, so to speak, deliver the vote of thanks and close the session. Respected speakers, eminent guests, thank you all for joining today's web seminar. A special thanks to Mr. Goel and for the partner association ELCINA and all its members. Although we are working together since 2016, officially we know each other for a much longer time, and I'm thank you very much for this. It was a good cooperation, and all the speeches and all the discussions we had before and led into our in our cooperation, which is fruitful for the electronics industry. Today, Alcina is organizing the 5th edition of India PCB Tech Conference, where the industry leaders would deliberate on the most pressing issues in the India PCB industry. We would also like to extend our special and warm thanks to IPCA for supporting Electronica India and Productronica India. In the upcoming sessions, we would gain insights on the global opportunity in the PCB value chain and the trends in the printed circuit technology from some of the renowned leaders from the PCB industry, and I hope you would find it useful. I would like to request everyone to visit Electronica India and Productronica India online, although it is not possible to see each other in person. We hope to do so in the upcoming years, and to experience, at least online, the latest technology in the electronics PCB industry. I would like to thank you all and wish you a very successful day and good luck for your business. Thank you very much. And now I would like to hand over again to Mr. Goel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leshner. I think we've had a fairly successful session with some good discussions. And we have a little time now, so we will possibly take a little break. We can stay logged in if we would like to. Mr. Doshi, then we will look forward to your joining us again at 12:25 or so. We'll start the session a little early. I think let's use this time for a short break. And thank you, very much to everybody and to all the with the industry, etc. We are always there to try and help you. And I would just like to welcome. So have enough time. We'll have, because we have only 1 hour and we cannot go overtime, because then the next session becomes a problem. So Tanmay, we can go live now. Thank you.
Okay, so in next 30 seconds we'll be live.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
And there are some questions also, Mr. Goel, I have just posted on your chat box.
Okay, we'll take care of that. And if everybody is okay with it, maybe I will not intervene every time when we change speakers. Can I request, Pareshji, will you be there for some time, or are you logging out now? It's too late for you.
It's right now I'm very interested and eager to listen to all these stalwarts. So I'll try to be up as long as possible. But if you are going to be around, then maybe you can just guide and then manage the thing just in case if I stepped out.
Okay, fine. So I'll keep watching. So while you are there, you take care. Otherwise, then I will take care of the switching over from from one speaker to the other. And then we'll have some questions also at the in between. There is some work I have to do. I will manage to do that.
Absolutely, no problem. I will. Between you and me, we'll figure it out.
Okay, perfect, sir. Okay, so firstly, a very, very warm welcome to everybody and to all the participants who would have joined us by now, I'm sure. This is actually a very important session of this conference, because we have got 4 very important companies who are represented here. What is very interesting is that I think, which was mentioned by Mr. Doshi on in one of his emails, that we are representing here a large MNC from the PCB sector. Then we have a fairly large Indian company, Epitome, which is represented. Then we have Fine Line, Mr. Doshi, who is actually a medium scale company but into very high end PCBs, which is very interesting. It's an interesting mix. And we have Mr. Tyagarajan, who is, I think, largely a design company, right, Mr. Tyagarajan?
Yes, sir. Yes, largely, yes.
Okay, so we have actually a very nice spectrum of industry which is covered here. Pareshji is also there, which is sort of a boutique company, more specialized company. So we have him also on board. So we are looking forward to a discussion on the demand drivers. There is no question or doubt about the demand for PCBs, and it is also very clear that we have a very, very long way to go in this battle. As we were just talking in the previous session, when there was presenting the latest updates on on the industry, it is really shocking to see that we are still only at about 220 million or 230 million dollars of production against a demand which is in excess of 2 billion. So we are only at about 10%. So I mean, there is really a lot of ground for us to cover. So with that, I would request the first speaker to come on board and to start. I'll first request Mr. Simha to please start the discussion with his views. What we can possibly do is speak for 3-4 minutes each of us, and then we can have some Q&A and some discussion among us. So I will first request Mr. R.S. Simha. He is the Managing Director and CFO of AT&S India, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Austria Technology and Systematechnik AG Austria. It's a, sorry, it's a slightly tongue twister for me, but it's it's an iconic company. I think has done very well in this sector, and we are very happy to have Mr. Simha on this. So over to you, Mr. Simha. Kindly please share your views, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Raju Goyal ji. I think good afternoon to all of you. So I would like to thank Elsina and Sri Raju Goyal ji for this opportunity to be part on this esteemed panel. I think we can start off saying that like you are using this online platform. Generally, you would have had a face-to-face interaction or a conference in some hotels. I think now we don't travel much. We may not have a round of beer with our friends, some excellent food, and of course the networking. So we are not living in a normal times. This what we see now, and some things are not same. But what is unusual is becoming more of an usual now. So what is abnormal is becoming more of a normal. So I think this is what can give us an opportunity for our industry, for electronics, and especially PCB, which forms a base for an electronic industry. So when we are using the online platform, there is always a higher electronics involved. So we are cutting down on travels and other things, but the necessities of the business is moving on. So this is a new change what we are seeing in the world. So which again adds more opportunity, and it's a key driver for our business. So the digital technology and electronics are always increasing importance in the people's lifestyle. So which requires like growing number of electronic devices such as sensors, artificial intelligence, and high-speed data transmissions, etc. And now what we are seeing, especially in this year, after we came out of 2018-19, where there was a deficiency of components in the industry. So we had certain setbacks last year. But what we see now is a little bit on a positive side, even though we are under the COVID pressure in this pandemic. So what we see is also like we never thought that computer was going to be a strongest driver coming back, which was quite a surprise to the market. Now, having seen a decline for last several years, it could be either a desktop or even a notebook. So as this is coming as a part of the consequence of work from home. So it's no longer a case like in a house you have only one computer. So now you have it's one per person, and also similarly for the tablets. So there is a significant demand what we see has been created for a multi-layer boards now. For example, like it's a 4-layer, 6-layer, or a 8-layer board, so along with the substrates for a CPU or a GPUs and the artificial intelligence devices. And of course, with that, with all the data, we need to keep the information that the server and the data center market also is continuing to increase, which again is a good growth driver for a PCB market. And also we can see in what type of value chain, whether it's a forward integration or a backward integration, how we want to place ourselves. Coupled with that, even the medical sector also has been growing steadily. Like we have more of wearables coming out, either in sports or in health, or having a glucometer checkup. One can do a checkup as a person can go on the go, and the heart monitors can also be done. So again, these are all providing a new opportunities or a new vistas for growth what we can start looking into. The mobile market also has been quite interesting what we have seen, although the volume was with the forecast was a decline, but now with the HDI, the flex boards and substrates, which each phone is increasing because of the 5G coming out, and some of the countries are also talking about the destruction in the technology moving ahead to a 6G, and also these high frequencies which are required completely for the new radio frequency modules and increased interconnection densities. So what are the key drivers what we need to look into in the PCB value chain, what is driving us? One is from the market driven, I would suggest it's on the communication. We are talking about the industry 4.0, the autonomous driving, the smart homes, the smart cities, and this also adding up a permanently increasing data volume, data protection, data security devices, what we need to add. And more and more also the components we see in the industries between the machine to machine talking to each other, the vehicle to vehicle communication, what we are looking at. So again, this gives us an opportunity to see a little bit beyond PCB in what type of a value chain we can place ourselves in the market. It could be go for a modular, like go for a miniaturization, which is always the norm when we see like in 2003 when we had the mobile market change over from a regular phone to a smartphone. We have been seeing a lot of miniaturization happening. Then also the function integration is going to continue. So with this, what also is coming across is the life cycle management of the product. So we also see a shorter lifetime, time to market also is shrinking. Again, this comes back to an opportunity. What we can see is in terms of the high density internet connect boards, the semi-additive fabrication process, what is popularly known as MSAP technology, which enables transition to much finer circuit geometrics. And also we are looking at more of embedding and 2.5D, which is more of a 2D manufacturing for a 3D applications. So I think whole enormous opportunities is what is there now for a growth. And also this brings more value to a PCB industry now. That's what we currently see. And apart from the market and technology, what I would like to also place later on for the discussion, we can look at it, is the geopolitical changes, what is happening across the world. Now the PCBA and the contract manufacturing for mobile segments are shifting their facilities from other Asian economies to India. So this gives a lot of opportunity for supply chain for the PCB area to grow in the domestic market. So this coupled with the government programs, what has been introduced like Atmanirbhar, electronic schemes such as PLI, SPECS, EMC 2.0. So I think that is making a huge opportunity, whether it's an MNC in India or a domestic company in India, to have a better conducive business environment than what we saw in the earlier. Just to wrap up my comments in a summary, I think what we also see is from 2021 and beyond, the industry would continue to be in a transforming phase, recovering and a growing mode. The positive expectations from the PCB market, the substrates area would continue to be more and more sophisticated. So demand for HDIs would continue to grow in the way we are looking at. So this gives, like if you look at our company, we are going more towards the modularization, go for it, the more how can we place ourselves more into the components business being embedded into the PCB. So that is more towards the forward integration, what we are looking at. So this would, with this, I would like to place before the panelists also that if you look at the opportunity, I think this is a time where we have huge, enormous opportunities, either in terms of technology, either in terms of the situation what our country is placed now with a lot of changes happening in the world, in the political environment, etc. And also the way the government is looking at the industry, the facilities what they are providing. I think this is more apt a phase what we are undergoing. Of course, there are a lot of challenges what we have. It is not as simple as what I enumerated, but definitely I think we have a lot of growth patterns what we can see for a PCB industry.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Simha. I'm there, Pareshji, so I will take this one. This is something, yeah, I mean, this is something very, very interesting. Mr. Simha has spoken about the opportunities, about the medical opportunity in the medical equipment, I think, which is a very big one today. And I'm also happy to, state that, ATNS is one of the applicants for the PLI scheme under the components, category, which is a very tough category actually, because I think, within 5 years, you are supposed to achieve a turnover which is 6 times of your input. of your investment, which is really very, very high. Actually, it's not realistic. But I believe only 2 companies have applied from India. But one is ATNS and one is Ascent Circuits also. I think so. So we wish them all the best, because if they're able to do it, that means, for 100 crore investment, they would be doing, 600 crores of manufacturing, which is almost $100 million. So I think that is something which we need very, very badly. So thank you, Mr. Sharma, and I will now hand over to Mr. Dhoot. Anurag ji, it's your turn now, please, to share your views. Mr. Dhoot, as we all know, and especially for all the participants who are viewing this, is the founder and the managing director of Epitome Components. What is really remarkable is that he has been in this business, I think, for more than 2 decades.
Yes, yes, 2 decades, more than 2 decades.
Yeah, and what I also noticed, recently when I was looking at your application, which we had requested for the PCB category, that you've been actually, investing quite a bit even in this time of COVID. So last, 2 to 3 years, I noticed that you have, made very significant, investments in your expansion. So which is, I think, a very positive sign for all of us. And we wish you all the best. And over to you now, Mr. Dhoot, for your views.
Thank you, Raju ji. Thanks a lot for thanks a lot to Elsina for giving me this opportunity to be a panelist here today. Very interesting insights from Mr. Sima. And ATNS, of course, everyone knows is a global company, a leader in the PCB space, and they have given some interesting insights. So I would like to talk more about the Indian scenario or the Indian market, and a very quick brief about the Indian PCB industry. As I think all are aware, the Indian PCB industry is not very large, and there are a few players, and the primary production which the Indian PCB industry has been doing is the 1 layer, 2 layer, and to some extent the 4 layer. So there are very few companies which are engaged in the multi-layer and the higher layer count. And having said that, it is also to be recognized that the Indian PCB industry, has everyone knows, has been now in the cynosure of the government's and the ministry's eyes, the Ministry of Electronics, where they've kind of recognized that being an ITA 1 product, they have faced considerable disabilities. So there has been a lot of discussion also about the disabilities, and I don't want to get into that once again, because there has been a lot of talk about the kind of disabilities. Just to touch upon it briefly, it is the economy of scale, the dumping from countries like China, then our higher interest rates, lack of an ecosystem. There is no laminate manufacturer in India. Almost everything, all materials, everything is imported. So I'm kind of, this has been discussed several times, but I think I can see and recognize the winds of change, because, particularly I think COVID-19 and whatever has been happening with China in the last few months, this completely, according to me, is likely to change the dynamics of electronics in India. It's very significant, because I can tell you that we are seeing a lot of new inquiries for our business, a lot of customers wanting to de-risk from China, people who are importing for the cheap, they are trying to de-risk, and our business is growing, and we are extremely bullish now in this current scenario, and we think that there is going to be tremendous growth in electronic manufacturing and PCB manufacturing, and there are going to be massive opportunities which are going to be thrown up. Even we are planning to make a large investment in a high-end PCB manufacturing plant with a large-scale investment, more than 100 crores, with state-of-the-art technologies, which we'll be able to make not only the single layer, double layer, but higher layers, boards for the computers, etc. What Mr. Sima talked about, machine, for the upcoming EV sector, for for the IoT, etc. So we are targeting all these, and I think the import of the PCBs will definitely come down going forward because the customers also recognize the risks involved, and the government is pushing for that with a lot of schemes like the MSIPs, and I heard that they are also going to simplify the PLI for the component industry and make it more viable. I don't know, maybe Elsina can throw more light on this, but it is significantly expected that this turnover to investment ratio will be brought down significantly to suit the component manufacturers. So that is also on the horizon. And besides, the state governments are offering the incentives, which can also, make life easier. So one must take advantage of all this and be bold enough to make the investment, looking at what is going to happen in the electronics. A great example before us is Dixon. If you look at the market capitalization of Dixon today, it has gone 4 times in the last 6 months. And that is only because of the recognition which is coming to the electronics sector today. So we definitely expect investments in PCB will come. And I am sure that with this growth coming in, there would be somebody who would definitely venture into laminate manufacturing, which is a great need of the country. So hopefully the laminate manufacturer will also come in. And we see a lot of significant growth coming in from sectors going forward, like automotive, consumer electronics, televisions, set-top boxes, electric vehicles is going to be big. Mark my words, that this is going to be a great driver for electronics in India, because almost everything is electronics when you talk about electric vehicles. And this is going to bring in significant opportunities. So having said that, I would like to conclude my discussion, conclude my talk, and hand over to the next speaker. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Anurag ji. I think you really touched the right points, and I personally like your bullish approach about the PCB industry and electronics industry in particular. You shared your vision, your ideas, and encouraged other players to also invest and then take this opportunity going forward. So there is, from Elsina point of view, what we understand that the new PLI scheme for SMEs or component players is on the cards, and investment to turnover ratio is represented such a way that it is suitable to most of us, and hopefully it should be announced or notified in few months.
Great.
So
that will be amazing.
About it, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Anurag ji, and I'm sure there will be many questions, and we look forward to your interactions. Now, I think Raju ji is there, and since you have the citation, may I request you to also introduce Abhay Doshi sir? Okay.
So definitely, and we will keep you informed about the new PLI, which is definitely going to come, and we are continuing to push very, very hard for PCB manufacturing, and we would like also to work with IPCA and IPC on this, because this is a very big opportunity, and I think unless we do this, we will never have a strong ESDM industry. So we will keep talking about it. Semiconductors are even further away, but at least we can get all the PCBs under our belt, so that we are able to take things forward quickly. And I'm very happy to hear about your new investment plans, Anurag. We will definitely, please let us know if we can do anything to support in any way with the government. We'll be very happy to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I will now request, Mr. Abhay Doshi. Abhayji, you were there in the earlier panel also. You had to be, pulled in by default. So thank you for coming in and, helping in on that. But, yours is a very interesting company. You are, if I, read a few lines of your profile for the benefit of all, our delegates. Mr. Doshi is a promoter director and has been involved in managing the company since, inception. He is a graduate in electronics and communication from Mysore and a postgraduate MBA degree in finance from University of California, Berkeley, which I believe is one of the top 20, universities in the USA, and which means a lot. I think, if you rank, Berkeley is one of the top universities. So that is something to be very proud of, sir. Mr. Doshi has experience in high technology area through his work experience at Maxter Corporation in San Jose, California, in the Silicon Valley, prior to promoting Fine Line Circuits Limited. With those few words, I will hand over the mic to you, Abhijit, and let's have your views on this and how you see this industry. And we want you to double every year. I think you have the potential. You have all the good products. You can really double every year. Please, all yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju-bhai, for having me here. My respects to Paresh-bhai, the esteemed panelists. I think that this is a wonderful time. It's clear that the demand drivers are all there because the digital revolution is exponentially going on, and the COVID has just accelerated this long-term trend. So apart from the several micro factors, the macro ones are the 5G, the big data, the artificial intelligence, which is yet to unfold, the IoT, the autonomous driving, and so many other sectors and applications that the earlier panelists mentioned. So clearly, the demand drivers are all here. PCBs truly offers a significant value chain for any entity to enter it or to diversify into. Clearly, the capabilities part is driven by the designs, the materials that can be handled, and the surface finishes that can be built. And the other is the execution abilities, which will drive how large volumes you would like to cater and the deliveries that you would like to give it to. So the entire PCB value chain consists of, in some sense, a PCB cosmos for everyone to look into and capture it. Clearly, the opportunity is global because not just in terms of applications and to service the customers, but as one of our distinguished panelists, Mr. Paresh Vasani, he's even ventured into manufacturing in USA. So clearly the opportunity is global. I think that I'd like to just focus on the fact that a demand is as good as our ability to execute it. So whilst the demands are all there, growing and large, it's important to focus on our ability to identify it, to be able to connect with the customers, and to execute it consistently. I think clearly the identification part is an entrepreneurial aspect, which anyone here and entering it must have. But the ability to connect with the customers is vital, and therefore clearly a well-defined value proposition in this entire PCB cosmos will enable a success. And most important, of course, is the team to constantly be able to build these capabilities. The third aspect is the execution in a consistent manner. This clearly, PCBs require a very, very large ability to invest, which needs to be very clear, and a team to execute it, and one which is constantly enhancing the supply chain. I think that if these picture of the landscape of the PCB value chain is clear, and the ability to connect with customers and execution in an efficient manner, I think anyone and everyone can have a successful go at this large demand. That's my views.
Rajuji, are you there? Okay. There you go.
But you please take over, sir. No problem. It will be nice. I think you know Mr. Thiagarajan so well. You have a long association with him, through IPCA, and I think you know more about his work. So I would request you to please introduce him and please take it forward, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No problem. Mr. Doshi, sir, you have really touched the right points. You have given a good, I would say, IIM lesson for any budding entrepreneurs, not necessarily for PCB, but for also any other industry. And I think your insight and your experience was very valuable, and it's good to learn many things, what you said just now. So thank you for your wisdom, thank you for your insight, and thank you for your excitement in PCB industry. We look forward to your growth.
Thank you.
Mr. Tyagarajan, I think most of us know him. He is an industry veteran, long associated with IPCA. He is a pioneer in design-led electronics manufacturing in India, I would say, or one of the pioneers. And he has seen PCB industry right from its inception to this level. So not only as a part of the PCB industry, but also on a supply chain side of the PCB industry, because he is also a user of PCBs. And he understands, he travels all over the world. He has an extensive experience on electronics industry, automotive, instrumentation, IoT, and so on and so forth. So, so your experience, your views, Mr. Tyagarajan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Paresh. Thank you very much for the introduction. I thank MMI, Elcino for organizing this tech conference, which has always been a focus point in the electronica for the PCB industry. And Mr. Tanmay, Mr. Raju Goyalji for bringing all talents together to discuss this today. Thank you very much. With this, I would like to start this small discussion on this. I would like to take it from the perspective of technology and then see how the PCB industry can gain from all these constraints that we are looking at today, primarily. So I'd like to share my screen. We're talking about the global opportunity in PCB value chain and demand drivers. So I have some market figures which Mr. Devendranath presented, which pretty much matches with what we have at the global market is about $80 billion in the years to come. Majority of the growth will be in the APAC region, which is primarily, where we have China, Taiwan, Korea for the PCB manufacturing, and the smaller companies like Vietnam, India, and all coming up to catch up with this. The rest of it is, that it's Europe and US. Okay. Why I touch upon this graph is again pretty much matches with what Mr. Information Study presented, Mr. Devendranath. The market segment is primarily computing, communication, consumer, industrial, medical, automotive, and military electronics. And the percentages are very well within the reach of what we are doing in India also. Probably we spend more on industrial lighting and other things. Let's see the global opportunity. The global opportunity for the PCB manufacturer has to come when we design the product ourselves. So we have to be a design company to deliver product. Otherwise, it's going to be a very difficult competitive situation where we cannot compete primarily on the price and the supply chain. And concept of product. I take a concept and develop a product. We have been developing products for the industry from the days AT Indus was Indal. They were the one primary supplier of PCBs when we started about almost like 35 years. Apply standards, deliver high quality. We'll go a little bit further on this, what we mean by these things. This is just a glimpse of the product that we developed. A small CNC machine with automatic tool changer of this size, which is not even available anywhere in the world. This is the one below. We have, go back. This simulates an automobile engine completely. So you can program the engine out of directly having to connect the electronics that is today. We have multiple ECU, we call it, the control units that controls the different parameters, engine like fuel injection, body control, temperature, safety, and things like that. Everything can be simulated through electronics within ourselves, within the lab, so that we can test the engine performance much before it is produced. We work with companies like Bosch. Some of these products are very confidential top copyright products. But I've just taken the liberty to share something that we can also do some of these technologies in India in direct competition with the MNC companies overseas. Most of these equipments are being exported to, we export electronics to China. Quite a lot of electronics, we send it to them. And almost like in 13 different countries, most advanced countries like Japan, Korea, and all other vehicle manufacturers like Hyundai, they all take products developed in India in this particular segment. Okay, so we can do it. I just want to say that we can also develop high quality product in competition with this. The other side, you see that, we also manufacture based on, as Mr. Paresh said, that we manufacture products in volume for the backlight. There is always a small light behind the mobile phones where you can control the light intensity, which is being used in consumer to automotive applications. So today we are talking about electronic clusters. Leading companies like Precol, Varac, and things like that develop this kind of technology within the country. So this is a very big opportunity for the PCB manufacturers to deliver in this particular segment. These are different types of clusters that we develop jointly. Again, it's vehicle dependent, like Bajaj, TVS, all these two-wheelers and four-wheelers use these kind of products at large volume. Like, these are all run into 100,000 a month kind of products. So India is one of the largest manufacturer in the world for the two-wheeler. We must really take proud of this situation and then, capitalize on supplying for this industry. Now, having said that, let's go quickly onto the topic. The value chain. What do you mean by value chain? Value chain refers to activities that take place within the company in order to deliver a valuable product. So this is a concept that has been listed in the 18th century by the French economist Francois Quincey. So how different people apply this value chain within the company, we can look at it and then see if there is anything that we can take full advantage of. The system described various departments, including human resources, marketing, sales, and operations, utilize this concept. Okay. So what are the inputs that we can look at from the PCB perspective is that we can have R&D, capacity, technology, skills, and branding. These are the critical inputs that will help you to improve your value chain in terms of delivering a better product. So we'll see whether the R&D, probably most companies cannot have an R&D center. To some extent, there can be an R&D within the company to deliver a better product. Capacity expansion depends largely on the investment. Like, some of the companies we talked about, AT&S, Circuit Center, and all those people are all are investing in large scale to increase the capacity. Why I put a crab at the bottom is that, if you try to do a technology expansion, probably the cost factor will come, say, do we invest so much money? Say, for example, certification, we talked about mill standards and things like that. It requires very high levels of technology to come in. So if we have to invest in technology, then there is always a pull back, like, oh, I have to spend, say, 10 crores on this equipment and things like that, like HDMI we are talking about, it requires a laser drilling machine like Hitachi or something is going to be very expensive. Skills, again, skills are a very, very important factor. India still have to develop a lot of skills in the PCB sector. We have done very well in the software, in other manufacturing technology, in the automotive, medical, but in the basic skills in the PCB manufacturing, we need to develop, and we have to take help from things like SSCI, Sector Skills Council, and the education institutions to jointly develop these kind of skills at a much higher way. Like when you talk about skills, when I graduated and started doing business, and we had only about 3 designers who are certified to do PCB design in the country. Like it is certified by IPC USA. Then through IPCA, we convinced them to come to India because they were not willing to come to India to develop our skills because they felt that it's a big competition. But today we have, I don't know, maybe about 3 to 5,000 certified designers who deliver millions of dollars worth of design services to companies all over the globe. So these skills are very important. Branding. Again, we somehow seem to stay within, content. We have to be a product branded to meet certain standards, quality. If you say, for example, a PCB from AT&S, it automatically says certain quality standard. Everybody should look at certain standards and then go about it. So this is a critical input. So now look at the demand drivers that we are talking about today. What will help the industry to look at and then say, capitalize? It has to be quantitative. Like, for example, it has to be something that we can define. Okay, I will do this much in terms of volume, in terms of pricing. It has to be very consistent. Like, for example, quality is one factor. We'll come back to that. It has to be measurable. It has to be with the new ideas. Unless you are able to bring in some new ideas into your process and systems, it is going to be very difficult to be very competitive. So let's look at the 4 factors for the PCB industry. Quantitative, you're looking at the price. Today, very price sensitive market. One of the reasons that we Indian industry cannot able to probably record a higher growth in the PCB industry, even though we have about 70% demand, only 30% we meet locally, is that the price, because as Epitome presented clearly that we have to import all the raw material, and we have to be competitive. Means we have about 20 to 30% value addition in terms of labor and process. So we can't be so competitive when this factor is not taken care. Consistent quality. See, as we said that we have to have a higher level of quality standards. Everyone has to look at quality as something, because end of the day, the product that we deliver has to survive only on the quality of the PCB. So about when I started the business, and we started looking at the military requirement. Today we develop over 5,000 different products for military, which are manufactured locally, including communication systems, the missiles and the aircrafts and things like that. Even today, like the systems in most of the aircrafts are being developed locally with companies like HAL, Bharat Electronics and things like that, mainly because we are able to meet a certain level of quality in all the products, which comes basically from the Indian made PCBs. I must say all the PCBs that we use are manufactured by the Indian manufacturers. I must say thankful to, I use a lot of services from Micropack, and I don't want to limit Paresh company and all those companies, big, small, everybody has contributed a lot. Measurable standards, like, we talked about standards, like we need to go into standards and then say how to implement these standards in our process, in our chemistry, in our products, so that, we are able to compete. This is something that we need to focus on, innovation. Innovation is how probably, people in overseas are able to compete in the market, is that they come out with a newer process, newer technology. For some reason, we still stay with the conventional process. Probably depend largely on the technology developed over the years. There's nothing wrong with that, but the new ideas and new innovation will help us to bring in more unique opportunities for us. Like, for example, FR4 is the material that will stay forever, but there is a lot of research going on in terms of BT epoxy, polyamide. Probably we don't even have to set up a laminate plant if we can convert most of the PCBs into newer technology products. So this is how the changes take place in Western countries, especially in Germany, where there's a lot of association with education institutions and things like that, where they develop newer technology, which is coming into application very quickly. We have to adapt that kind of concept in our system. I would like to say that, like in Bangalore, IIT is setting up a center for a lot of technologies to come together, because this is part of the initiative by the IIT alumni. It's about 100,000 square feet center is coming up very shortly, this will have a lot of incubation for newer technologies to be developed. So the industry can go walk into any of these, not only necessarily in this center. You have now, earlier when I graduated, it was only 5 IITs. Today, we have 23 IITs, thanks to the government initiative to spread this technology and to bring this kind of advanced research closer to the industry. And many NITs are doing a fantastic work. So the industry should walk into these institutions and then say, look, I have this problem. I want this metallurgy to be developed for this process. I want this chemistry to be developed. It is within reach of all the industries, so that you are there in the next step. It must be mandatory for the industry to take a certain amount of time and investment in the education institution. That's the only way we can probably move to the next step of, bringing in new technology, because all these numbers that we talked about in terms of $400 billion and things like that cannot happen unless we have our own products, our own systems, our own process. Because if we really have to go invest in large scale manufacturing, but has to be with a lot more with our own technologies and things like that. That's my humble submission. And we have been successful with our own products, competing with a lot of companies overseas, mainly because we bring in high level of quality and standards into our system. Thank you very much. I transfer to Mr. Goel ji.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tyagarajan. Lot of interesting insights about the technology and the opportunities. Extremely well crafted, presentation. Very well, modular kind of, presentation, which was extremely nice. And thank you so much. I think you are also, an ocean of knowledge, and technology is all, residing within you. And I'm sure this will get used more and more as time goes by, and more companies and more of this demand grows. We have taken one round of our discussion, sir. We have about 15 minutes more, so we would like to possibly have one more short round of maybe 1 or 2 minutes each, where I would request all the speakers to come back, and possibly you can, sir, you can also refer to what the other speakers have said, and maybe you have some comments on that. So maybe we will go through the same round again, and I will request Mr. Simha to please come back, and maybe you have some comments on what you have heard, the other speakers say, or maybe you want to add to something on that, that will be great, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Goelji, once again. I think with the idea or the concept what Mr. Tyagarajan brought about of working along with the educational institutions, I think it's a great step. I can share my experiences and also the success what we are seeing. In AT&S, we also believe in close collaboration with the technical institutes. For example, we have tie up with the Technical Institute of Engineering in Graz and technology. Similarly, now we also have an engagement with the IIT Delhi. We just formally signed an MOU, so where we also take the support of the students and the professors there. There I find there's a huge knowledge bank what is available. Similarly, we are also working with IIT Madras. It's on a most of the student sponsorship program, where we encourage students to come over to our facility in AT&S in Austria, and also take up the projects, and also we give them the opportunity to work in the cross-cultural environment in the technical university in Graz. And this, I believe, would pave a long way. One is in building up this nurturing this relationship with the education institutions, and also when we look at to the new technology, new ventures. I think these are all very, very bright students and professors which India we can boast of, we can contribute. Similarly, one such institution which you're also looking at is the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore for some of the research programs and some of the solution problems what we have. Now, I think if we go to them, really, they are able to provide some good solutions to this. I think this is a very good move, what you are thinking, Mr. Tyagarajan. But as I said, we can tell from our experience, this is going to be a big success for the company. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Simha, I have one point that, I mean, a lot of us would like to know your plans, AT&S as a global company for India, and what are you planning for next 3 to 5 years? If you can just quickly throw some idea on that, subject to it publicly information available.
And right now, I mean, I think it's known publicly that we have just ended with an investment of 280 crores in the high density interconnect and high frequency technology that concluded last year. We are also part of the MCIPS program. So this would take us for another 2 to 3 years is what we are looking at in that range. But of course, after that also we are looking at in a 5-year horizon, there will be some the investments going to happen. What we have seen also in the past in this industry, especially when you want to grow and be very close to the market developments, you may have to make an investment between once in 3 to 5 years. So that's what we also have in the plans.
Okay, I think that is very nice, sir. Very nice to hear that. And with your PLI initiative, I'm sure you have a lot of work to do in the next year or two, because there are very tough timelines which have been set by the government, very tough targets also. So, but we wish you all the best for that. And
thank you.
I will now request Mr. Anuragji to please give his comments. Anuragji, if you would like to say something about what has been discussed so far.
Yeah, I would just like to, it was very, very engaging, the whole discussion. And I really liked what the other speakers said. I particularly liked that crab which Tyagarajan made, where he talked about a combination of R&D, CapEx, technology, skills, and branding. And that really touched the chord. And something similar which also Mr. Doshi said about building the right team, because this PCB business is a complex business. And one of the things which I kind of wanted to talk about is about the which I missed actually in my first talk, is definitely the availability of the right managers and the skilled people to run the show. And this is something which is a challenge to growth. And like he said, because he said that it is your ability to execute. You have a demand, but how much you can execute? That is the question. So that was a very valid point made by Mr. Doshi, and that is one thing which one needs to realize and work upon. And like Mr. Tyagarajan talked about these 5 things. So the PCB manufacturers, maybe they don't have something called as the R&D, but it could be something called as a development, where they have a plan and a roadmap to move up in the value chain. So I would consider R&D from our point of view as that. So looking at these 5 aspects, that's what I would like to say, that it is very engaging, very interesting, and a good takeaway from me, for me as well as for all the panelists and participants. Thank you.
So over to you, Mr. Doshi. But before you speak, I would like to say only one thing, sir. I think we need somebody to break the speed barrier here, or the light barrier, or whatever, the sound barrier, because we are sitting in a place, we are in a hole.
Hello, Rajuji, I'm sorry, I had did you say something, because
No.
My sound had got disconnected.
No, I'm just making a general comment. I'm saying that we need to break the sound barrier here. We are so deep down in the hole that just to come out of the well, we have got problems with all our resources. We've got problem with the supply chain. We've got problem with the capital equipment. We've got problem with our environmental issues. There is, so I mean, we were just talking, in the previous session. If we want a $6 billion industry, we need a $3 billion investment. So I mean, we need to get at least one or two large companies. I believe some companies in Taiwan are looking at India very, very seriously right now. And with all these policies coming and all the visits that we have made in the last few years, there are one or two companies who are kind of now talking a little seriously about coming to India. Unless somebody comes and gives that critical mass to us, so that the entire ecosystem will start moving, or possibly we can even find a way that 4 or 5 companies in India come together, and we all come together in one cluster. And we start working from there, and that may also create that momentum for the industry. So I think we need to look at a slightly out of the box kind of solution, because our regular solutions are not working. Otherwise, it is only AT&S all the way. So AT&S has to make $1 billion investment and take this industry out of the hole. Over to you, Abhijit, please.
I think this has been an eye-opener of sorts for me. It's clear that the digital revolution which is going on is going to be a big demand driver, but I think it will also enable many of the issues like supply chain absence to go away, is my opinion. Second, I think that PCB is ready to jump out of this well, and that shift has already happened. Today, earlier AT&S was the biggest player, and today we are seeing Essent, Epitome, all these making big value investments. We are also looking at Mr. Vasani venturing into manufacturing in USA. So that, I think in some sense, the frog has actually leapt out of the well, and we are seeing that happen. I think the hearing everyone over here just evokes a very clear sense that the PCB industry has reached an inflection point, and it's now really all green ahead. So.
You need to.
Yeah, back to you, Mr. Thiagarajan, and then I would request Paresh ji to please give his comments, and then possibly we can conclude after that.
Yes, as Mr. Abhijit mentioned, PCB industry is really coming out of the well. There's no doubt about it. Mainly, the technology is well within the reach, but we cannot go head on with killing the Goliaths. We have to probably go side by side to see our industry to come to some level before we really say that import from other countries have to be stopped and things like that, because there's going to be kind of difficult situation for the industry to grow by far. Most electronics manufacturing will get affected. Yes, the government is supporting in a large way in terms of subsidies and incentives and things like that. Definitely a certain amount of barrier has to come for the PCBs from the overseas, mainly because they somehow able to arrive at some price which is not really realistic, I must say. I don't want to say that dumping or anything like that, but some of the price that we get for PCBs are not realistic, because we know the laminate price, we know the process cost and things like that. Considering that there is certain amount of unethical business practices, I must say, allowed to, that is affecting the industry's growth. But nevertheless, as in local manufacturers have to support the PCB industry. I request all of them to see even at a small incremental cost that we can do it locally. That will take care of large scale fluctuations in the currency, for example, and things like that. So that's the submission to the industry to support local manufacturers of PCB and help them to survive, so that one day we will also be deliver a product which is much more competitive than your import. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thiagarajan. I think it was very well said, very thoughtful, I would say provocating discussion in many ways, and that kind of like, encourage all of us to do something about it and prove ourselves that yes, we are worthy of the success. We are worthy of growth, and we are capable of investing. Investment. This is I don't really have the exact number, but I'm fairly confident that Indian PCB industry collectively invested more money in last 5 years than 20 years, including the pipeline that we are talking about. So this is a huge quantum jump. Obviously, PCB industry, please consider as an elephant. It takes a while to pick up the speed, but once it picks up the speed, it's impossible to stop. So I think a frog and elephant are two analogies, and then it's up to us what we want to pick up. Okay, so on that front. I was also thinking that most of us are first generation entrepreneurs. So we learn, we make mistake, we grow, we learn, that's the process that's going on. And then we have to be also careful on our finances. So that's probably one of the reasons why we could not really take up the speed. But now in electronics industry, besides AT&S, now the Tatas have come on board. I was talking to Mr. Agarwala in yesterday's session, and he mentioned that they are committing investment about 8,000 crores in electronics manufacturing. Their primary focus is mechanics, but I'm sure that they will venture into other aspects of electronics components and supply chain, hopefully into PCB also. We keep our fingers crossed. So all these developments are true indications that not only us as an industry, but outsiders also are looking at industry very interestingly. And then they also see the value and some sort of an opportunity. There is another thing that I think is really happening. Having said all these things, the future is bright. Let's focus and then go for it. I also would like to take this opportunity that I see two questions that maybe we can try to answer from delegates. The one is from Mr. Shashank Kumar, and he wants to know that can any of us tell PCB usage in automotive sector, future growth expectations, major steps to localize PCB for auto sector? I would suggest Mr. Simha, if you want to take this question and try to give your insight.
I think we see more and more of an automation going into the automobiles. Like when we saw in the maybe some 10 years back, we never thought of it as more of a mechanical driven. But somewhere when I was talking to a different automobile industry, my friend, they were mentioning when we see into in the front of the car, so we have close to about 350 components, all mechanical integrated components that go into the car to make it work. Now that is being shrunk to close to 45 to 50 electronic components. So that gives us an image of the opportunity, what comes about in the automotive sector. And added to that, of course, we are talking about the future technology in autonomous driving. And there also, as was mentioned, the time to market also is shrinking. So really that I see a huge growth coming out from the automotive sector, and it's a huge opportunity. Even if you want to compare the Indian customers compared to the overseas, either it could be a European market or a US market, the type of technology time difference what was there in earlier years is not there now. Almost 2 to 3 years, whatever the technology comes in the overseas market, the similar technology what we see in India. So I think that also gives more opportunity for the domestic electronics industry also to grow in the same pace as what we see in the overseas market.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sinha. There is one more question, and I think Mr. Tyagarajan can take this question because it is pertaining to solder profile. So there is a question from Mr. Jignesh PR. He wants to know what profile is suitable for 0.2 millimeter PCB soldering. Mr. Tyagarajan.
Are we talking about ROHS? Like today, most of the PCBs use ROHS technology. Okay, if it is lead free and things like that, we need to look at very low profile soldering with reasonable temperature setting. again, this question I need to know a little more data about, like, if are you looking at some reflow, something, or it depends on the process flow, or it's a manual soldering that you're looking at. But then again, probably you can touch with that.
So there are many factors that one need to know before you can recommend. So maybe he can get in touch with you offline, and then you can try to help him out.
Definitely, yes. Thank you.
We can also look at it in the next session where we will have a lot of technical discussion. So maybe somebody can answer there. So we will see.
Maybe we try to address this also. I think that should be from all of us. Rajuji, if you just would like to conclude it.
I think we are almost right on time. So it's been a wonderful session as far as punctuality goes. But that is just something by the side. I think it's been a very valuable discussion to have four participants, and of course Pareshji also. Thank you for continuing on this session. I guess it is about midnight for you now, or maybe it's time for you to sleep. But you look quite fresh, so I guess we have we have been able to incentivize you enough to stay alert and awake. And thank you to all the panelists, Mr. Simha, Abhayji, to Mr. Tyagarajan sir, thank you so much. And Anuragji, I think you have hidden yourself, but thank you so much for being there. It's been a wonderful session. I think one of the best that I have attended in all the five forums that we've had till now over the 5 years. I hope it will also help all the delegates, and on behalf of MMI, on behalf of IPC also, I would like to thank everybody, and on behalf of LC. With that, I now close the session, and thank you once again. Bye bye, sir. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all my colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. May I request all of you to turn on your camera, please?
Good afternoon. Yeah, we see everyone. Great.
Good afternoon, good evening, good night. I don't know, depending on who's where. I'm Raju Goel from Elsina, but so nice to have all of you here. David, I know you are somewhere in USA, I would think, unless you are traveling, which I doubt.
He's very
calling from New Jersey.
From New Jersey, okay. So you are like 10 and a half hours.
It is 3:07 a.m.
Okay. Oh, that's rather early, but thank you very much for taking, making the effort and joining us. And we have Mr. Vidya Sahar. Welcome from Australia. It's so nice to see you here. You look a lot different from the picture I have of yours. So, but thank you so much. So nice to see you, and nice to meet you online. Because we never had a chance to meet otherwise. And we have Mr. Stefan Korth is here. I think Mr. Korth is also here. We don't see him or hear him right now.
I'm here.
Okay, good, wonderful.
And here, and you can see me.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. But I think your timing is better. I think you would be around maybe. Oh, you also would be somewhere in the morning, early morning, right?
No, early morning. It's not 10 minutes past 9, so I'm very fine.
So that's not bad.
I have a very folkloristic background. I know this is my personal home office in the basement of my house, but I don't like to camouflage it with something virtual. That's why I stick to that. That's okay. That's live today. That's office live today. So we can handle that.
I'm also at home. I will first introduce myself because I have never met Mr. Nitya Sahar. I have not met Mr. Farooq, who's also here. Mr. Farooq, welcome. We will be speaking about e-waste and recycling. And Mr. Stephen Korth. My name is Raju Goel. I work for the Electronic Industries Association of India, and we organize this particular conference every year now for last 5 years, along with the Electronica show. And our main objective, of course, is to promote the PCB industry. So I would like we, of course, I mean, as an association, we represent all the component manufacturing and also the EMS industry, which is the PCB assembly industry. But of course, this session is mainly for PCB and PCBA. I will leave the detailed introductions to Dr. Sudhir Kumar, who's our session chairman, and he's going to lead this whole discussion, and I will introduce him briefly to all of you. Dr. Sudhir Kumar, he's the Chief Operating Officer of the National Center for Flexible Electronics. This is based out of IIT Kanpur. It is one of the premium technology institutes in the country. And this center has been set up with support from the Government of India and the Ministry of Electronics. So it has, it is working on various technologies, and Dr. Kumar is leading this entire effort. And they are doing a lot of R&D, and a lot of new IP is being created here, and they are working on a number of areas which I would leave to Dr. Kumar to highlight to all of you. I will not button in between Dr. Sudhir Kumar. I will leave the session to you, and I'll come back in the end. So I'll be hearing and I'll be there. You can call me anytime, but I will leave it to you. And now I open the session and give it to Dr. Sudhir Kumar. Over to you, sir, please.
Thank you, Rajuji. Thank you very much for a nice introduction, and good afternoon, good morning to our colleague from US and Europe, especially to David. Very early to you. Thanks for joining this one. It is with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to this wonderful panel session on trends in printed circuit technology. Very important topic. I was listening the previous session, so that I will give you some brief during the session as we go along. In my privileged capacity of chair of the session, looking at the session program, you can see from the program that we have a lot to get through this session. And I'm very grateful that we have 4 esteemed panelists from the different area, very versatile, in a very versatile capacity. David from US, Stephen from Germany, Sahar from Australia, Umar from India. It is really great to see such a, beautiful the international panel having basically, capability from technology development to the concept to the product commercialization and transition to the manufacturing. David brings basically is one of the veteran of the industry that from the factory for future, basically going for manufacturing. That Stephen comes from the testing equipment. He's a thermography expert to give the product reliability and the quality. And last, that Umar, basically very important, the cycle does not complete without any waste management. So waste management cycle to protect the environment. So it's a very wonderful panel, and I thank you, all of you. And we go along for that one. So, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like to welcome now to Sahar first, taking the technology trend, okay. To understand his view, he will present some slides on the trends in printable circuit technology. Few words about the Sahar. The Sahar brings rich and in-depth experience and knowledge in the field of printed circuit technology. He has worked in various key organizations globally. In India, in the Keytronics Private Limited, G-Lab Innovation India, and Fraunhofer Institute for Silicon Technology for Fabrication of Printed Sensor field. Okay. Currently, he's pursuing his PhD in Future Industries Institute, University of Australia. He holds master degree in printed electronics from Technical University Chemnitz, Germany, and very actively participating in various printed circuit and printed electronics programs globally. He received Best Product Award of the Year in Print Week 2017 and IDTex 2018. Okay, over to you, Sahar. We would like to listen your views and your ideas in the trends of printed circuit technology.
Yep. Thank you so much, Sudhir, for the introduction. And also, I'm Sahar and would like to share my thoughts in the field of electronics and how we are going to take this industry to what will be the next from the electronics. So that's my talk, and I'm going to bridge both electronics as well as the another technologies actually is on the pathway where we can bridge both industry and academia. So I think this conference or this PCB Tech conference will be the good opportunity for the investors or for the manufacturers or for the researchers as well as for the students or youngsters, so they can take part some of my ideas, so they can make the ideas into a product which will be very worthwhile for the global market. So as you have seen in the first slide, like I have shown some of the four images in the bottom side. So those are all in the base of electronics, but what we are going to do, what we are doing here is that we are integrating material science and electronics together to come up with a new product. So those products will act as sensors as well as the displays, or you can use as heaters, or you can use as a flexible circuits or flexible PCB circuit design. So before entering into the concept, like I just would like to give a overview of the electronics growth. So as everyone aware that we are now playing with nano and microelectronics, in which like we have like n number of MEM sensors, n number of nano sensors, where we can able to analyze the diabetes or for biological applications or for physical applications, or let's say, for example, heater applications where you can use flexible or the micro heaters for the neonatal applications, in which like you can keep the baby at 36.6 degree in the different environmental conditions. So these are all some applications, and I have seen from Acrio Sweden, like they have developed a very good integrated biosensors platform in which you can able to monitor 6 different types of biological applications, which means that you can go with the diabetes, you can test the sweat analysis, and then even you can test the pressure and also like you can test the bacteria, like for example, the presence of bacteria in the blood or in the wound. So there are some beautiful applications which we are going to focus in the coming slide. So how can we do this application, or how can we bridge the application with the recent electronics technology or the recent mechanism which we are playing, which we are working in the commercial electronic industry or the silicon electronic industry. So as everyone aware of, like we have seen a very big PCB boards, or we normally use a capacitors, resistors, we normally use some inductors, we normally use some displays. So, but in the commercial point of view, or in the biological aspect, or in the physical aspect, or in the nano aspect, we need to have a miniaturized device where we can able to monitor the biological or the physical application. So that is the reason that we want some other technology where we can bridge the electronics or the material science to come up with something new, So that's the printed electronics, where you can bridge both the electronics as well as the printing technologies. As everyone knows that India is the world's second largest printing industry, and we do print a number of papers, and normally we use colors, right? But in this technology, in the printed electronics technology, we are going to use, instead of using the color inks, we are going to use an electronic ink, which means that the material science or the material science engineers or material science researchers, they bring the ink which actually conduct or which works as a capacitive principle or gives a resistive principle, or we can use like semiconductor ink, like how we are using on silicon. So here some metal oxides can play a role which act as semiconductors. As you can see the below image, like we have seen the N-fuse cell, soft battery, and some solar cells, some display. So in the recent days, people already started manufacturing these devices especially in the display technologies, like from LG, if you start with an OLED technology, and now the Heliotech from Germany. So they are really producing the flexible solar cells like in a 100-meter roll. And there are some few batteries coming up, like a 1.5 volts, a normal DC battery, where we can use for small applications just to run the biosensors to test the samples, in a minute. So these are all the beauty of this technology, but there is a big gap for this technology. Where it comes, the big gap is actually between the industry and the academia. Because in the academia, they do a lot of research. They do like more than 1,000 research institutes. They are working on material science, and they're bringing a lot of outcomes, like you can use this material for solar cells, you can use this material for display technologies. But we need some industries to take part into the research and come up with some innovative products by using conventional printing technologies. Like, for example, screen printing is one of the best machine where you can use these inks to develop some innovative products. Why we need this technology? What is the use of this technology? As you have seen from the left-hand side, you have seen the shoe insole. So that's the one product which I developed in Germany with the Fraunhofer Institute. So we came up with a product which can measure the pressure on our complete foot. Why we need to measure the pressure? As everyone knows that for the diabetes patients, if they are walking, like if they are having, like, let's say for example 60% diabetes or more than that, then they can walk but they can't feel the pressure or on the foot. So in that case, if they're having some bleeding or something, obviously what will happen is that the pressure starts to reduce. In order to monitor those pressure, we need a sensor which needs to have an arbitrary shape, which means that it needs to have an asymmetrical shape in which we can able to monitor this pressure. So there is a big question: can we use micro sensors or MEMS capacitive sensors? Yes, but in this scenario, we need more than 600 MEMS sensors in order to fabricate one sole. So what we did is that we developed an electronic ink, and we manufactured the sole by using a screen printing, and it cost really very less compared to the MEMS capacitive sensor. So and it's a mass producible, so you can change the foot size from 40 to 36, and also the material is cheap, of course, and you can make it as a flexible because you need to run, you need to walk. So we need to have a flexible and stretchable devices. And on the other hand, the solar cell, I mean, in the field of energy applications. So as of now, like, we need to have a very good energy harvester, energy harvesting device. So in that case, printed electronics will play a major role. And now the people started working on different kinds of solar cells just to increase the efficiency. And as I mentioned, like Heliotech, they are really doing a very good job. And this is one of the place where the PCB manufacturers, they can integrate with this technology and they can come up with a new product. And some other aspects, like where we can focus much on what we need. For example, in the field of food industries, like we can integrate PCB as well as the material science engineers to fabricate or to develop a sensor or sensing device where you can monitor the food, especially for neonatal as well as for the medical application. And on the other hand, like especially for the posture, like the hand posture or the leg posture, as well as for the gait analysis application. And the third one is the flexible heaters. Obviously, we have seen that there are n number of heaters, nichrome heaters are available, but we can't use a direct voltage. So we need to have an alternating voltage in order to run those heaters. So some of the industries, they have already come up with flexible heaters, which works at 5 volts. Even there are few heaters nowadays, they are working at 2.5 volt. So in that scenario, we can implement, or we can develop a very good warmer bed for neonatal application, in which we can monitor the temperature, or you can maintain the temperature of 36.6 degrees Celsius, what mother needs to give for the baby. So there are some more innovative applications and some more gap to fill it, and by using this technology. So I recommend all the electronics engineers and also the industry manufacturers to take part with this technology to come up with some innovative products. It's a big market in future, and we need to bridge, anyway, we need to bridge the silicon technologies, as we are already playing a major role in PCB. So this is my basic outline. How these are all the big trends in the PCB technology, as well as how we are going to bridge. So my final talk would be, let's bridge the research and academia to come up with some new innovation in the field of printed electronics by bridging the commercial electronics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for interesting presentation and insights, for putting your thoughts on the table and being on time too. Okay. Now I'm delighted to invite our second speaker, Mr. David W. Wergman. And I would request that the all panelists has fairly 8 to 10 minutes to present and give your thoughts, so we can have some 5 to 10 minutes for question answers. So just a few words about David. David is the Vice President of Standards and Training for IPC USA. He is supporting the affiliation agreement between IPC and the Wiring Harness Manufacturer Association, WHMA. David also serves as an Executive Director of WHMA. He brings long experience with him, more than 39 years, of which more than 30 years leading the staff teams responsible for IPC standardization efforts, education, and certification. David also served 10 years for Secretary General of the World Electric Circuit Council. He received many awards till date, globally recognized. David has a degree in biology and chemistry from University of Illinois. Over to you, David. Please put your thought on the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudhir. Everyone can hear me? Yep. So it's an honor to be able to participate with you today, and I'm interested in talking to the audience about some of IPC activities to support Factory of the Future, and talking about some of our programs that we are bringing to bear to help industry. So just from who we are, we're an industry association headquartered in the USA, but we focus on electronics manufacturing globally. We focus on many verticals. Anywhere there is electronics made, we are looking to help the industry build electronics better. We were formed as a printed circuit board association in 1957 in the United States, and we have been growing and adding activities to support this industry, and then into electronics assembly, and now into wire harness. From our offices, our headquarters in the US, we have several offices in the US. We have been supporting India through our Bangalore headquarters and Delhi satellite office since 2010. So from a factory of the future, we are investing to help industry modernize. We have added a chief technologist. Kelly joined us from IBM about 6 months ago. Our goal is to help industry take advantage of Industry 4.0 technologies and work towards a more automated factory, and again, a goal to help companies build electronics better. There is significant modernization that can take place under implementation of Industry 4.0. We're hoping to support the orderly implementation as well as accelerate, and we want to share experiences, case studies, and standardization activity to help that take place. And so we're going to be focusing many of our efforts to help this happen. From a standpoint of what do we call factory of the future, essentially F2, we're calling it modernization. It goes by many other names, Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, smart factory. But we see this as impacting all of the members that IPC supports, that being from the circuit board, the design and circuit board technology through the assembly. A lot of the push right now is in data analytics and the use of artificial intelligence to gain insight into the electronics manufacturing operations. But there is plenty of foundational engineering and good old-fashioned engineering to make sure that this is done in a orderly and useful fashion. Having a trusted manufacturing source as more information is shared over the internet, having trust in your cybersecurity systems and in your supply chain is of increased interest, and so there are standards being worked by IPC committees in this area, and then a significant amount of effort specifically in the electronics manufacturing and particularly in the assembly area. We recognize, while there is a lot of information being shared, that this is capital equipment expensive. And so we see that this will take time, that people are not going to go and scrap their manufacturing lines. There will be an implementation period as people work to upgrade, or companies start to upgrade some of their existing equipment and try and add on some new enhancements to gain some economies of the factory of the future. So we see a continuum of our current effort where companies are working to inside their own factory to gain efficiencies. But we see that over 5 years where networks of OEMs working with their EMS and PCB fabricators, they will be increasing collaboration at an OEM supply chain, and then as we go out 10 years, multiple OEMs and multiple manufacturers participating as a group. We see this as a possibility for the future, and we hope to be putting systems in to allow this collaboration to take place. And that's some of the things that we're going to talk about. So what have we done currently over the last, as we've announced this effort really starting in October, starting to put pieces in place to start the collaboration effort and bring it underway. So there is a significant amount of industry work taking place. We don't intend to do it all by ourselves because there is significant activity taking place with other industries association. From the printed circuit board side, the high density packaging HDPUG group has been putting significant effort into PCB research. INEMI has worked for another consortium working on packaging, assembly, and technology road mapping. Then there are other groups, AIAG from the automotive industry, the Power Supply Manufacturers Association, and there is a manufacturing technology center in the UK that we're looking to work with to be a demonstration factory for some of the things that we're trying to achieve with IPC standards. We are providing platforms for what we would consider, or we've identified, or we believe are factory of the future technology solutions, and we're collecting those and providing visibility to those. So we will be collecting a list of solution providers to shine a spotlight on that to hopefully accelerate some of the implementation. And then we had our first meeting earlier this week of our Chief Technologist Council. So we have a small group of individuals that represent the technology offices of key OEMs, EMS, and PCB companies that we look to lean on them to help us build the vision for our factory of the future efforts. This will drive our standards, our education, and as far as future conferences. We have, for our Apex Expo trade event, which we based on pandemic, we've just decided this week to go virtual. The conference and education will still take place. 30% is focused on factory of the future, 30% is focused on printed circuit board technology, just looking it over from a standpoint, because I know that the PCB is of strong interest to the attendees here. I would say about 60 to 75% of those papers related to HDI, some of the interface standard or the interface efforts or concerns about in the microvias. It's where a lot of work is taking place, and we're providing a platform to share that learning. We are spending a significant amount of effort in the electronics assembly and the connected factory exchange. We will be putting out more information on IPC CFX, implementation and validation. I have another slide on that just before the end of my talk. And then more offerings in both digital standards as well as educational offerings. So we tried to approach this and said, where should IPC play, and where is the industry in implementing some of the factory of the future technologies, and how can we add value, and how can we help industry accelerate some of this? And so we've just started collecting this. We've broken them down into various areas. Are the technologies mature, or are they emerging? And then we've highlighted areas where we're already starting to develop some of the standards. So this is just kind of trying to give us a menu and allow us to focus in certain areas. If you look at the first column where the numbers are, where the color extends into the first column, these areas are where we're already working. Our standards committees are creating new standards efforts in some of these technology areas. So more to come. So we will be using this as somewhat of our roadmap and highlighting this as we add in additional programming areas. From a standpoint, if you're trying to, if you want to stay on top and aware of IPC's efforts, we have a website, a Factory of the Future website, part of our IPC website. You can follow Matt Kelly on LinkedIn. He does publish quite often articles on that. So we're hoping to that people will follow him as we jointly go through this journey. We will highlight some of the efforts and successes of both some of the partners like MTC and company success stories as we're able to release those, and we will have podcasts and various articles all on this collaborative website. So this is something that you can continue to follow. Oops.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much for your nice presentation and very deep insights. You have still something to show?
Sorry, yeah, I just so this is a one of the efforts that we're planning. This is our CFX effort. The CFX effort is intended to enhance machine-to-machine communication as well as machine-to-factory systems. We have standardized messages using an industry standard protocol. We are putting a lot of effort in because we believe that this will, the industry will be able to get some quick wins on as companies and machine manufacturers implement CFX messaging. So more to come on this. This is IPC 2591. A lot of effort going into this on behalf of the organization, and we believe that 2021 you'll see some significant announcements on this. Through our network. I do have a separate presentation that IPC India has been working on. We do plan a December 18th where I can talk more on the CFX effort, give people background on what's happening. And so this will be India time on the 18th, 12:30. So hopefully you'll hear more at that point. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about some of the support IPC is providing industry in this area.
Thank you, David. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for your very insightful presentation. And I hope to see some of the concept for the factory of the future in India to lower the cost of production, especially in PCB industries, in Indian manufacturer. I have a few questions, but I'll take it in the end. Let's invite the next speaker. We have Stephen Korth from Infratech GmbH, Germany. Few words about Mr. Korth. Mr. Korth is a thermography expert and working in this field since 2009. He is an application specialist for microscopy thermography and non-destructive testing. He also serves as an area manager for Indian industrial partners, academic contacts, and defense research applications. Stephen, over to you. We are very delighted to have you here to understand actually that how your techniques work to improve the product, to improve the quality and the reliability, especially associated to the PCB manufacturing. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Sudhir. Thank you. So I hope you can see my presentation now.
Yes, we can see. Go ahead.
Okay, good. And I'm very happy and very delighted that I have an opportunity to talk to you here in this panel and this conference as well. I will briefly introduce thermography as a testing and R&D tool for PCB development in this presentation. Briefly introduce our company in this aerial view. Infratech is located in the southeastern part of Germany, actually in a historical hotspot of microelectronics development in itself, because in this part of Germany you have a 60-year-old history of different microelectronics developments, even though that part was located in the former GDR. We have been established as a spin-off of the Dresden Technical University in 1991. So 2021, there will be our 30th anniversary coming on. And since then, we developed various kinds of infrared technologies, both on the component level, but in my case, in the section where I'm working, in the business unit I'm working, we are providing infrared technology for touchless temperature measurements or thermography. And the basic usage of those thermography cameras includes, if it's coming to high power elements, it's pretty straightforward to see and to use thermography cameras for high voltage components, real-time temperature measurements, which can monitor and control and record several heating processes which always can happen in electrics and electronics. And with the capability of visualizing these effects, you have a very good and useful and obvious tool which gives you a two-dimensional overview of components and their thermal behavior. There are components like precision resistors also depending on thermal analysis due to their size, due to the power they have to handle. And here temperature is also a critical issue that helps you to see how the device itself is performing. The other aspect of thermography in PCB development is the combination of cameras and high resolution lens systems to reach a level where you are achieving the best possible resolution or best possible physical resolution down to the very diffraction limit of the optics, to see small details and defects and thermal changes within the structure itself. This is something where we can create resolutions from 100 microns down to pixel sizes of less than 2 microns with a thermal camera device. And the visualization of these thermal effects in the PCB components is pretty straightforward, but it's not just a couple of colorful images. Actually, with our software tools, we are able also to introduce and to differentiate. We have a large number of measuring areas which we can record, analyze, and measure in real time or in the post-processing process of the thermal image recorded. So this gives you a direct feedback to your PCB design and to the preparation of the simulations you're going to verify with the real-time actual temperature measurements. Practical examples can be given in this iPhone, in this finger sensor, fingerprint sensor of this iPhone here, which is semi-transparent to infrared radiation. And here you have the whole structure behind this. And when you focus on a certain area here, in this context, we achieve physical pixel size of 1.25 microns. So here at this point, we also can provide valuable visualization of very small scale processes occurring thermally. Another very interesting application, also referring to MEMS structures. In this context here, we have structures which have an extent of something like 100 microns at some thermal microdrive 3-dimensional stage used for moving and controlling and handling nano components, either for microelectronics or even medical and biomedical applications. So with this capability, we can also give details and reveal details and structures which are not accessible with other imaging and measuring technologies. The basic concept of our attendance at this event here, at this conference, is just to give you an idea of what is possible with our technologies. Since Infratech is on the market for nearly 30 years now, we have a huge number of electronic companies in our portfolio. So nowadays, I would say that virtually every cell phone manufacturer has one of our systems in their R&D labs. Many integrators, many academic research organizations, universities working on these fields know the products we are offering. And we are our local sales network in India. We already also have provided our systems technologies to the domestic market in India as well. The other thing, one important thing is when we look at the structures thermally, we have to apply certain, let's say, processing technologies which reveal structures not visible in so-called passive thermography. If you just look at this small PCB structure with a plain thermal image, you will see the heating background of that, but nothing happens in the structure itself. But we also apply certain image processing procedures, but also depending on external excitation sources that apply lock-in algorithms to the actual image processing, which means that during the sampling of the actual scene, the sampling of the image recorded, we manage to visualize temperature differences on a level to 1 millikelvin resolution that are not visible with common passive thermography procedures. So also on the software side and the processing side, we are going very strong to bring out the best and smallest thermal effects visible in the structures monitored. That was a brief presentation, a brief introduction to the capabilities our systems can offer. The good thing is we have a lot of expertise, we have a lot of references. The bad thing is hard to show any images from them, because you can imagine on this very dedicated and very specific and somehow secret market of R&D on electronics, there are a lot of NDAs you have to sign when you provide these systems. But with the few examples here and with our academic references, there should be some very good examples and opportunities also for Indian PCB developers to work with our technology. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Stephen. Very useful presentation. And personally, that we in the National Center for Flexible Electronics would like to explore some opportunity to use your Infratech devices, because we understand, the non-destructive testing for flexible circuits or flexible PCBs are very, very important to find out something what is going on. So I'll discuss with you separately. Also, I have some questions.
Appreciate.
Last, okay. Now we have our next speaker, the last of this panel session, the Mr. Mohammad Umar Farooq, co-founder and CTO, Word Scrap Cycling Solution Private Limited. The Umar Farooq is young and dynamic leader who is been working in the field of e-waste recycling industry since 2010. Further, he is financed networking architect and the data science professional, and his 1 decade of experience and research, he had helped the recycling industry, leading brands to develop their own process line and technology for e-waste recycling. It's such an important topic. We can spend a lot of time, but beyond that, I was interacting with him. I understood that he has a lot of insight in the technology roadmap also. So Umar, over to you. I would request you basically that give the brief of such an important topic, that to complete the cycle, to protect the environment or for the sustainability. Also touch base on the trends of the technology if you can, if the time permits. So you have 8 to 10 minutes, please. Okay, thanks. You have to unmute. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Sudhir sir. Thank you very much for providing such a marvelous platform. And I welcome all of you on behalf of World Scrap Recycling Solutions Private Limited and my founder, Mr. T.K. Bhaskaran. You see, altogether, this is a very different kind of platform for me, because as being a electronic waste management company and as one of the largest recycler, I'll put it into a situation like I'll talk about how to optimize the design and accountability towards the information technology for the sustainable recycling. So let me share my screen. Are you able to see the slides?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let me start with this, that you see, as a recycler, when we recycle anything and when we are saying anything, okay, this e-waste is coming in and how we need to recycle it, then we need to see lots of things, especially the sustainability part of it, easiness of the recycling, and also the environmental thing. That is one of the most important aspect here. So if we go for the design of the electronics, then I can only tell, okay, one of the most important part, like if you take an example, if a human being comes in this world, he needs to go out also, but you cannot throw him on the ground. So same goes with the electronics also. Like when you design something, when you produce something, it needs to be properly ended in a more sustainable way. And that's how both of you as a PCB manufacturer and as a recycler, we need to be in a proper synced way, that how we are going to take this responsibility towards the more in an optimized way. So you see the design of electronics and the design stage of electronics development, they need to be designed in such a way that device or product, when reaching its end of life, it needs to be properly recycled in a more efficient way. And let me take an example like design for serviceability. It would be foolish to assume every single PCB that is deployed will last for a decade or so. There are bound to be defects, damage due to wear and tear or electrical transit. In such situation, a PCB that is designed for serviceability increases the possibility of a repair being carried out instead of ending it in the landfill. Designing for serviceability involves various considerations. For instance, you will want to ensure components are properly being labeled, so technical person is able to locate and rectify the faults with ease. It also means allocating surge suppressing components if the PCB being used in outdoor settings. When I'm talking about the refurbishing, I'm talking about the repairability of the product. I'm not talking about the replacement of the product. When I'm replacing a product in the refurbishing process, then again, I'm creating a demand for the e-waste. And that's what, as a manufacturer or a PCB producer, you people need to understand. And I'm sure that you are understanding this, that design it in such a way that it needs to be repaired easily. Otherwise, it will become very hard for a recycler to refurbish it and do other service activities. My second point would be is the modularity of the thing. You see, it is understandable that consumer products are pushing for smaller size. However, when you involved in a commercial or industrial applications where size is not a critical factor, consider taking a modular approach in your PCB design. Instead of a single PCB, it makes sense to split the design into a couple or more parts. For instance, the microcontroller and other SMD ICs are placed on one PCB and wire to board connectors are on another PCB. With this approach, an upgrade on the MCU or the SMD ICs will only result in replacing half of the total size of the PCB. PCB modular design involves precise dimensions to ensure the multiple PCBs are accurately connected, particularly when built in a stackable manner. You'll want to use you see, this is one of the important aspect of that I wanted to point out. And I'm more emphasizing on the like a program, I'm just naming it, a green PCB development process. Clearly, you see e-waste having a negative impact on the environment. Therefore, there is a need for electronic recycling. Recycling PCBs is most effective when it is supported by the entire development process as a whole. Therefore, the best strategy for reducing e-waste requires that design for electronics recycling and manufacturing for electronic recycling be incorporated. The reasons to adopt a green PCB development process can be like, there are so many aspects of it. For example, one of them is maybe a regulatory compliance. It is one of the important part because ROHS and WEEE is one of the important part of it. Then another is also a lowering your manufacturing cost by using recycled components and smaller board designs. The cost of manufacturing can be lessened and productivity can be increased hugely. And one of the most important part is hazard waste exposure that I wanted to talk in a more brief manner. You see, another major reason that more green PCB development is needed to minimize the exposure to hazardous waste by workers in mostly third world countries like us. Most e-waste is exported to a few countries in Asia and Africa and stored in landfills. Prior to burning, local residents harvest parts and materials from the devices and in the process expose themselves to potentially harmful chemicals and materials. Executing an effective green PCB development process means that you must partner with a contract manufacturer that is committed to a sustainable manufacturing to support and ensure the manufacturability of your design. For electronics recycling strategy, how do I implement design for electronic recycling? Then I think I need that we know that what design for electronic recycling is and why we should adopt a green PCB development process that incorporates it. We can address how to implement it. Generally, any design choice, including selected components and connectors, trace routing, board sizes, stack-ups, and material options that make the device more reliable, smaller, faster or easier to disassemble. I can assume that you're understanding it properly. Electronic recycling plan or strategies. So let me tell you some best practices to follow. I'm just telling them. It is not a assured way to do this, but these things are from my part. You see, use smaller or more compact board designs. That is one of the important aspects. Minimize the number of components. Minimize the number of fasteners or connectors. I'm talking on a very board level. Minimize different types of plastic and metals. Minimize use of plated or contaminated metals. Minimize the use of nuts and bolts. You see, you can design the whole process in such a way that we should be using more brackets instead of more nuts and bolts, that it should fit properly. Like take for example, an iPhone, when you are taking the panels of a phone, you can fit easily without any screws, only 2 screws you need to fit in.
We have to summarize in 2 minutes.
Yes, yes, sir. Minimize adhesive for plastic parts and follow regulation standards such as ROHS and WEEE, because these are the most important part. I'm summarizing it. You see, these 3 are the most important parts are here. Regulatory compliances. You see, I cannot burden you that, okay, you need to, because when a manufacturer is designing the PCB, the application part is more important rather than the recycling for him. So I can understand it, that thing, but one needs to think that, okay, it is also one of the most important part. Then lower your manufacturing cost as much as possible and reduce hazardous waste. So that's all I need to point out here. And I'm ready to take questions from the panelists, because I'll be looking forward to the great panelists who are sitting here. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Umar. Thank you for a nice summary for the waste management. I'm sure that after stimulating presentations, discussion, you would like to ask some questions or comments on some of the points the speaker made. So session is open for the question. If some of you would like to ask the panelists some question, please feel free to ask. I have one question to Sahar, which I will ask, and I have one question to David. Yeah. Please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I know who is there? Go ahead. So Sahar, let me start with one question. Are you listening?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were talking the flexible electronics, very innovative application, a charter for the flexible electronics going from lab to fab. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you see the flexible PCB supporting those devices where flexible PCBs are required? Any insight on that?
Okay. So as far I think flexible PCBs are already in the manufacturing side. Like for example, for all the flexible keyboards and for the basic input devices, they are already using flexible PCBs. But in compare with the printed electronics or integrating the flexible PCBs with the printed electronics, it's actually a very big market. So like for all the sensors, for all the display devices, it would be really good to have flexible PCBs for the printed flexible electronics. But as far as I have seen, maybe 5 to 6% of the devices are having flexible PCBs in the field of flexible electronics. So there is a big market for flexible PCBs in order to integrate with the flexible electronics.
How do you see the cost roadmap in terms of the 3D printing or some other printing technology to use in the flexible PCBs?
I am not sure how the 3D printing it actually works for flexible PCBs, because it will not match actually, first of all, because we can't use 3D printing technologies for manufacturing flexible PCBs or like integrating with flexible PCBs, because I think they have the separate method in order to fabricate the flexible PCBs using the copper plates.
Okay. Yeah, Umar, you would like to ask something? You were saying
Yes, sir. I need to ask this question to the Mr. Sahar.
Please.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. How are you? Actually, I want to ask this thing that whenever you are designing anything,
yes,
are you really considering and thinking about the end of life of that thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I earlier I mentioned, like we need to like we are mainly looking for the biological applications, right? So in the mode of biological applications, or in the mode of medical application or healthcare applications, so these devices we can't use like for the multiple times. For example, sensors. So if we have a very good circuit or a circuit which can integrate which can integrate the sensors. So in that case, like we need PCBs. But as for the flexible sensors, we no need we no need flexible sensors which needs to work for multiple times, because we just need a single time, because it's a kind of use one through for the biological and healthcare applications. Is that
okay? Yes. And sir, I have another question for Mr. David. Sir, I need to ask you this, that when you are thinking about this manufacturing industry or the PCB design and all those things, what's your take on the end of life of it and e-waste thing? Like, okay, this will go into the end of life, and then how you are taking the design into consideration and thinking that, okay, one day it will go to the landfill, or else it should go up to a proper recycling facility and it should be recycled into a proper, most sophisticated manner. Please have a word on that, sir.
Sure. The committee standardization discussion. So first of all, thanks for the question. It's certainly of concern. Where the committees try to put effort into that is in the design activities, the DFX, and try to make decisions on behalf of where you're making the decisions at your original design stage, recognizing that at some point in time it has to be recycled or disposed of. So that is included in some of our DFX standards, which would include design for recyclability or design for the environment.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Rajuji, you have something to say, some question? We are coming to the close because we are approaching to 2:40.
I think that this is very interesting for me. It is very, very high technology stuff which I'm trying to understand. It was all very interesting. I have only been involved a little bit with the e-waste space in India, and it still remains a very big challenge because what is happening is that most of the e-waste is going into informal channels in India, which becomes a very big issue because I mean I guess the kind of challenges that we are facing in India are a lot different from what exists in Europe or USA or maybe in other developed countries. So I think it is great to see people like Mr. Omar now in this space, because we need large companies and large organizations to be dealing with this issue. Because firstly, we have a challenge with the PCB industry itself. We have a very small industry while our demand is huge. So a lot of stuff is getting imported. Then there are a lot of cost and price pressures due to which I believe, though the government is trying very hard to ensure, but a lot of substandard stuff comes in, stuff which is not even approved as per ROHS. So I think those are the issues that we are facing, and for me this was a very interesting session. I heard most of it while I was doing something else in parallel, because we have another big exam coming tomorrow. So I took the opportunity, but it was really nice to be part of the session and to be there. If everyone is done, then I think we can close the session, and with our sincere thanks to all the speakers, and wish you have a nice day, and the weekend after tomorrow should be nice, and I hope the weather stays good in Europe, especially where I guess it must be getting very cold. My son is presently in which country I keep forgetting.
Well, this morning we had -5 degrees centigrade. That's another way to tackle the COVID pandemic, just to freeze it, but I think it won't work.
But somehow I'm finding that the numbers in India are going down quite sharply now. All over country, 25,000, while it was almost 100,000 just about 2 weeks ago. Unless someone is playing with the numbers, I think it is a sharp decline, which is it's very, very heartening, because so many people have lost their lives, and it became quite crazy here in between.
Sure.
But
Thank
anyway,
you, Rajuji, for encouraging comment. So for closing, I would like to thank again the speakers for their interesting and stimulating contributions, and the participants for the valuable following discussion. Also, I would like to thank you, Elsina, and the organizer for organizing such an beautiful panel discussion. It should be happening more and more in the technology space, where Sahar was bringing the bridging the gap between academia and industry. And Sahar, whenever you are in India, please visit the National Center for the Flexible Electronics. This is exactly what is doing, and this is a beautiful center.
Sure.
This is operational in printable electronics. Okay. I really thank you all, and we close the session now. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Steve.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Okay, Tanmay, should we close?
Okay, Mr. Goel. So we will just close the session now.
Yes, please.